Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice podcast channel. Tonight we step into an Alabama winter night in 1840, where the wind moves like a restless hand across the dark fields, and the slave quarters glow with one stubborn, amber light. What did sleep feel like when freedom was denied, when the cold found every crack, and when a small fire could feel like a secret mercy? You see the frost silvering the fence rails, hear bare branches tapping together, and smell wood smoke curling low beneath a cloudy sky. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and while the fire begins to breathe, comment where you're listening from and what your local time is. Maybe it is midnight. Maybe it is almost morning. Either way, you are welcome here. Now, dim the lights and let your eyes adjust to the dim blue edge of an Alabama plantation yard. You stand beneath a winter sky that seems lower than it should. The stars are there, but thin clouds blur them into pale dust. The air has a sharp bite, the kind that slips past collars and cuffs. It touches your wrists first, then your cheeks, then the tender place behind your ears. The wind moves across the open ground with no politeness at all. It comes over the fields where cotton stalks stand dry and brittle. Their empty stems click softly together, like small bones of the harvest. The sound is not loud, but it follows you. You are near the slave quarters, set apart from the main house. The cabins stand in a loose row, plain and low against the dark. Some are built of rough logs, some of planks, depending on the plantation and its means. In Alabama by 1840, cotton has become king, which is a grand phrase for a very cruel arrangement. The state has changed quickly in only a few decades. After land cessions, removals, speculation, and the spread of cotton planting, enslaved labour has expanded across the Black Belt. That name comes from the rich dark soil, though the history beneath it is darker still. By 1840, Alabama holds hundreds of thousands of enslaved people. You feel that number not as a statistic, but as breath in cold air. Each cabin holds lives, names, memories, injuries, jokes, songs, and tired hands. History often tries to count people neatly. Life refuses to stay that tidy. A dog barks somewhere beyond the yard. Another answers, farther off, muffled by distance and trees. The sound rolls over the ground and fades into the wind. You pause beside a fence rail, placing your hand on the cold wood. The rail feels damp and grainy beneath your palm. Frost has settled along its top edge, delicate as sugar. The night smells of smoke, frozen mud, old straw, and the faint sourness of livestock. Somewhere nearby, a mule shifts heavily in its pen. Ahead, one cabin has light showing through the chinks. Not much light, just thin orange lines between boards and mud daubing. It makes the darkness seem even deeper around it. Yet it also draws you closer, because warmth is persuasive. You walk carefully over rutted earth. The ground is hard where the cold has gripped it, but soft beneath thin crusts of mud. Your steps make a dull, sticky sound. The wind presses against your coat and seems offended you're still moving. Inside the cabin, people are gathering around the fire. You can hear the low murmur of voices through the wall. There is no great comfort here, no soft chamber prepared for leisure. Still, the human voice has its own kind of blanket. You approach the doorway and notice how low it feels. The entrance is simple, with a wooden door that does not fit perfectly. Cold air has opinions about bad carpentry. It whistles softly around the edges, as if giving criticism all night. The cabin itself is not large. On many plantations, enslaved families lived in one-room dwellings, often crowded and poorly insulated. Some quarters were built quickly, with usefulness measured by the owner's convenience rather than the residents' comfort. The enslaved had to make homes inside structures never designed for their peace. That is one of the quiet tragedies here. A place can be home and prison together. It can hold lullabies and terror, tenderness and command. You feel that contradiction before you even cross the threshold. The door opens inward with a wooden groan. Warm air meets your face, carrying smoke, ash, cornmeal, and damp wool. The smell is thick but not unpleasant. It belongs to survival, and survival rarely smells like lavender. The fire sits in a rough hearth, where flames climb around pine knots. Pine burns bright and fast, spitting resin as it goes. A clay chimney pulls some smoke upward, but not all of it. A thin haze rests beneath the rafters. Your eyes water slightly. Everyone's eyes probably do. Nobody pauses dramatically about it, because smoke indoors is not exactly a new plot twist. It is simply part of the night, like cold feet and tired shoulders. You step inside and feel the packed earth floor beneath you. It is uneven, smoothed by many crossings, many mornings, many returns after forced labour. Straw lies near one wall. A few wooden stools sit close to the hearth, their legs worn and polished by use. The firelight changes everything it touches. A child's cheek glows gold for a moment, then falls into shadow. An older woman's hands move over cloth, mending by feel as much as sight. A man sits with his back curved, elbows on knees, staring into the coals. Nobody in this room has had an easy day. The body tells you that without needing a speech. Shoulders slope, fingers flex slowly. Ankles are stretched toward the heat with the seriousness of people negotiating peace with winter. Outside, the wind scrapes along the wall. Inside, the fire answers in pops and small collapses of ember. The contrast is almost tender. Freezing wind outside, cosy fire within. Though cosy must be understood carefully here. This is not comfort given freely. It is comfort made from scraps, skill, patience, and the stubborn refusal to become only what bondage declares. A hearth can be small and still become a centre. A room can be poor and still hold ceremony. You're offered a place near the wall, where the draught is less direct. The wall is not truly warm, but it is better than the doorway. You lower yourself and feel rough timber against your shoulder. It scratches lightly through your sleeve. A pot hangs near the fire, its contents nearly gone. Cornmeal mush, perhaps, or greens cooked down with whatever flavour could be spared. Food among enslaved communities varied by region, season, plantation size, and personal gardens. In many places, rations were limited, so people supplemented them through hunting, fishing, gardening, trading, and skillful cooking. That skill mattered deeply. A little cornmeal, a few sweet potatoes, field peas, or greens could become supper through knowledge carried in hands. African foodways, native influences, and hard necessity shaped dishes that became central to southern cooking. History loves famous generals, but supper has shaped more evenings than any general ever did. The child near the hearth leans against someone's knee. Sleep keeps tugging at the child's head, making it dip and rise. The adult hand settles over the child's hair, slow and steady. There is no grand announcement of love. There does not need to be. Across the room, a woman hums under her breath. The melody is low enough to hide within the fire's crackle. It might be a work song softened for night, or a spiritual fragment, or something older than anyone here can name. Sound can carry memory when paper is forbidden or dangerous. Historians still argue whether certain songs preserve direct African musical patterns, or whether those patterns changed so completely in America that they became something new. Maybe both are true in that annoying way history has. People do not carry culture like a sealed jar. They carry it like fire, feeding it with whatever burns. A quirky little detail sits near the hearth, almost easy to miss. Someone has placed a small horseshoe nail, a shell, or a bit of pierced metal near the doorway. In parts of the South, charms and protective objects could be used quietly, blending African spiritual traditions with local materials and Christian symbols. To an outsider, it may look like nothing. To someone inside, it may mean protection. It may say that the door is watched. It may say that bad luck, sickness, or cruel intentions should think twice before entering. Even the unseen world, apparently, needs boundaries. You listen as the room settles into its night rhythm. A spoon scrapes the last of something from a wooden bowl. Cloth rasps softly as it is folded. A baby sighs, then makes a tiny complaining sound, as if filing a report against winter. The older woman by the fire shifts her weight and stretches her fingers. Her knuckles are swollen. The firelight shows lines on her face that might be age, strain, or both. She has seen seasons pass through this place, each one leaving its mark. Her eyes move toward the door whenever the wind pushes it. That small glance says much. In slavery, night brought rest, but not safety. Patrols, overseers, sickness, punishment, sale, and forced separation could intrude upon any hour. Yet night also offered a narrow space for community. People could speak more freely, though never without risk. They could teach children, share news, mend clothes, tend wounds, court quietly, pray, remember, and plan. The night was watched, but it was not empty. You feel the room's warmth gather slowly around your legs. Your feet still ache from the cold, but the pain changes shape. It becomes a tingling return, almost unpleasant before it becomes relief. The body is dramatic about being rescued. A boy adds a small stick to the fire. He does it carefully, with the practiced seriousness of someone trusted with a useful task. Sparks lift and vanish. Smoke thickens for a moment, then finds the chimney again. The chimney is made of sticks and clay, or perhaps rough brick if this plantation spent more than usual. Many poorer cabins relied on clay-daubed stick chimneys, which needed constant repair. Fire was life, but also danger. One careless moment could turn warmth into catastrophe. You can hear the cabin breathe with the weather. Every gust presses through cracks, lifts the ash smell, and stirs the hanging cloth near the wall. The roof creaks. The door trembles lightly. Still, the people inside do not panic at every sound. They know the language of this place. They know which creak is weather, which step is animal, which distant call means trouble. Survival trains the ear until it becomes almost scholarly. The body learns footnotes the mind never requested. Someone speaks softly about tomorrow's work. The words are plain, practical, and heavy. Cotton fields may look still tonight, but they are waiting. The plantation clock does not care whether the wind froze your bones. In 1840, Alabama's cotton economy depended on enslaved labor at every level. Planting, hoeing, picking, ginning, hauling, cooking, building, nursing, and countless other tasks filled the year. The labor system was not accidental or mild. It was organized, profitable, and defended with law and violence. That truth sits inside the room with you. It does not shout every second, because people still need to breathe. But it is there, beneath the bowl, beneath the quilt, beneath the lullaby. The fire does not erase it. And yet, the fire matters. That is the strange balance of this night. You cannot romanticize the cabin, because bondage frames every board. You cannot ignore the warmth either, because people made meaning here anyway. The man near the hearth rubs his palms together. His hands are broad, scarred in small places and darkened by work. He reaches toward the flame, then pulls back when the heat bites. Outside. The wind slams once against the wall, and everyone listens. Nothing follows, only the field, only the night, only the dog far away. The room exhales without making show of it. Nobody says they were worried. Nobody has to. A young woman adjusts a quilt over two sleeping children. The quilt is patched from pieces of old cloth, worn shirts, sacking, and salvaged fragments. Its colours are muted in the firelight. Brown, faded blue, dull red. The tired white of cloth washed many times. Textiles in enslaved quarters could carry labour and memory together. Clothing was often coarse and rationed, with allowances distributed by owners on schedules that rarely matched human need. Yet people altered, repaired, decorated, and repurposed fabric. Even a patch could become a decision. The quilt smells faintly of smoke and bodies. It holds warmth better than the open air, though not enough to defeat the whole night. The children curl toward each other naturally. Their bare feet disappear beneath the cloth. You notice how everyone makes room. Not much, because there is not much room to make. Still, knees shift, shoulders angle, a stool turns slightly. Space becomes a shared language. Near the rafters, dried herbs hang from a cord. They cast thin shadows that tremble when smoke moves. Perhaps they are for cooking, perhaps for medicine, perhaps for both. Enslaved healers often held knowledge of plants, roots, poultices, teas, and midwifery. White owners sometimes depended on that knowledge while pretending superiority. History has a talent for hypocrisy. It wears polished shoes and still tracks mud everywhere. The wind lowers for a moment. In that small quiet, the fire becomes loud. It clicks, sighs, and crumbles into itself. A coal breaks open, revealing a red heart brighter than the flame. You look around the cabin and feel how night gathers in layers. There is the physical darkness beyond the door. There is the social darkness of slavery surrounding every life here. There is also the soft darkness that allows tired eyes to close. That last darkness is not cruel by itself. Sleep comes as a visitor, not a solution. It cannot free anyone, but it can mend the edge of the mind for a few hours. Sometimes a few hours are not small. A woman begins to tell a quiet story to keep the children calm. Her voice is low, almost woven with the smoke. You catch the shape of an animal trickster, clever enough to survive larger teeth. The children listen, half awake, because cleverness is a warm thing too. Such stories often carried more than amusement. They taught caution, wit, patience, and the art of seeing power from underneath. The rabbit, the fox, the turtle, and the spider could say what people could not safely say aloud. A small creature winning by intelligence is never just a small creature. Outside, frost thickens over the yard. The main house sits somewhere beyond the darkness, larger as colder in its own proud way. Its windows may be shuttered, its rooms may be warmed by fires built and tended by enslaved hands. Here in the quarter, the fire is smaller, but the circle around it belongs to those who lean close. Even under ownership, not every feeling can be owned, not every silence can be inspected. You feel your breathing slow, the smoke is irritating, the floor is hard, and the wind keeps needling the walls. Still, the room has gathered you into its rhythm. It asks nothing grand of you except attention. A loose board taps above the doorway. Tap, pause, tap again. The sound might bother you at first, then it becomes part of the night's uneven music. Someone banks the fire with ash, coaxing it to last. This is an old domestic art, humble and precise. Too much air, and the wood burns away. Too little, and morning begins with cold ashes and regret. The orange light lowers, faces soften. The cabin seems to shrink and deepen at the same time. Shadows climb the walls like slow water. You sit with the knowledge that this warmth is fragile. A gust could enter, a command could come, a sale notice, a sickness, a punishment, or a bell before dawn could break the hour apart. But for now, the room holds, the people inside hold, the fire holds. The child finally stops fighting sleep and leans fully into the quilt. The older woman's humming returns, thinner now, almost hidden beneath breath. The man by the hearth lowers his head. A few sparks rise, bright as brief thoughts, and disappear into the smoky dark. You remain near the wall, feeling the rough timber, smelling ash and cornmeal, listening to the wind search for openings. It keeps looking, patient and cold. Inside, human warmth answers without speeches. The cabin is not safe in the way a home should be safe. It is not gentle in the way a bed should be gentle. Yet within its narrow walls, people have made a living circle against the night. You understand, slowly, that history is not only found in laws and dates, it is also in the way someone saves a coal for morning. It is in the way a child is covered first. It is in the quiet decision to keep singing, even softly. When the world outside says silence would be easier, the wind passes over the roof again, long and low. The fire settles into embers. The cabin darkens, but it does not disappear. It glows from within, like a small memory refusing the cold. You settle deeper into the cabin's small warmth, where the fires become the room's quiet centre. It does not blaze wildly now, but breathes in steady orange pulses. Each pulse reaches the walls, touches faces, and slips away again. The shadows return slowly, never offended or only patient. The cabin is built for endurance, not comfort. Rough planks run along one side, their edges uneven from hurried work. Between them, clay daubing fills the gaps as best it can. In some places, the clay has cracked and fallen away, leaving narrow mouths for the wind. You can feel these mouths breathing. A draught slides along the floor and curls around your ankles. It is colder near the ground, where the packed earth holds the night. When you shift your feet closer to the hearth, warmth moves up through your toes with slow mercy. The floor is not bare everywhere. Pieces of sacking, old straw, and worn boards create small islands against the dirt. They do not make the room soft. They simply make it less unforgiving. That is sometimes the entire goal of a winter night. You notice how every object has more than one purpose. A stool can be a seat, a step, a shelf, or a place for a sleepy child. A wooden crate can hold cornmeal by day and serve as a bedside table by night. A blanket can warm shoulders, cover a doorway, or hide someone's trembling. Nothing here is casual. Poverty has a way of making objects work over time. Slavery sharpened that pressure further, because owners controlled resources tightly. Enslaved people often received clothing, food, and housing according to plantation rules, not human comfort. Yet inside these limits, people rearranged the world with skill. They carved, patched, twisted, tied, mended, saved, and borrowed. A bent nail could hold a kettle, a broken pot could cradle embers, a strip of cloth could become a hinge, a bandage, or a child's treasure. You lean toward the hearth and study the chimney. It rises in a rough, tapering column, made from sticks packed with clay. Smoke slips upward through it in a tired ribbon. Some smoke escapes into the room anyway, drifting beneath the roof like grey thought. Stick and clay chimneys were common in many rough cabins across the south. They could be made with local materials, though they needed repair after rain, heat, and age. A well-built brick chimney was stronger, naturally. The enslaver's budget, unfortunately, often had other priorities. The firewood is stacked along the wall, close enough to reach. Some pieces are split oak, slow and dependable. Others are resinous pine, brighter and quicker. Pine knots are especially prized for light, because their pitch burns with a fierce yellow glow. There is a smell to it. Sharp pine resin mixes with ash, damp clay, smoke, old wool, and human closeness. It is not the smell of ease. It is the smell of people refusing to freeze politely. A woman kneels near the hearth and turns a small hoe cake in a flat pan. The cornmeal surface is browned and rough, with tiny cracks along the edge. When she lifts it, steam rises faintly. Hunger turns everyone's attention without asking permission. Corn was central in many enslaved people's diets, especially where rations were issued in meal or grain. Pork, molasses, peas, greens, or sweet potatoes might appear depending on season and location. On some plantations, enslaved families tended garden patches in limited time. Those patches mattered greatly. The woman breaks the cake into careful portions. The pieces are not equal by accident. An older man receives one portion, Two children share another, and someone saves a smaller piece near the wall. You see discipline in the simple act of division. The heat from the bread reaches you first, then comes the smell. Plain but comforting. Cornmeal carries a soft sweetness when warmed properly. It is humble food. Yes, but humility has fed plenty of empires that later forgot to say thank you. A child watches the pan with enormous seriousness. His eyes follow every crumb. Someone notices and flicks him a tiny broken edge. He catches it, grins, and presses it between his fingers before eating. Small pleasures have to move quietly here. They cannot be too grand, too loud, or too easily stolen. A bite, a smile, a shared look, a warmed hand, a story beginning under breath. These things become the cabin's hidden furniture. You turn your attention to these sleeping places. Along one side, a rope bed stands low and plain. The cords sag slightly beneath a thin mattress stuffed with straw, moss, corn shucks, or whatever was available. Such bedding could scratch, shift, and flatten quickly. Near the opposite wall, pallets lie close to the floor. They are made from quilts, sacking, and spare cloth layered over straw. The youngest children will likely sleep nearest the warmest bodies. The adults will take what space remains, because adulthood is often just discomfort with responsibilities. The cabin may hold a family, or more than one family. On some plantations, quarters were arranged by household. On others, crowding forced relatives and unrelated people together. Marriage among enslaved people had deep social meaning, though law often refused to recognize it fully. That cruel refusal shaped the room itself. A couple might share a bed tonight, but still live under the threat of sale. Children might sleep beside parents who could not legally protect them. The cabin holds tenderness within a system built to break it. You feel the boards behind you cool your shoulder. Every time the wind pushes outside, the wall seems to shiver. Someone has stuffed rags into the worst gaps. Another crack is packed with clay that dried in a lumpy ridge. There is skill in these repairs. Fingers have pressed that clay, smoothed it, checked it, and returned when it failed. The cabin may belong on paper to the owner. Its livability belongs to those who patched it in darkness and cold. A little shelf near the hearth catches your eye. It holds a tin cup, a gourd dipper, a bit of thread, and a small folded cloth. Beside them rest a bone button, polished from handling. It looks unimportant until you imagine needing it. Quirky things survive in cabins because people refuse to waste them. A hollow gourd can become a bowl, ladle, birdhouse, seed keeper, or water dipper. Bottle glass might be smoothed and reused as a scraper. Corn cobs could serve as fuel, stoppers, brushes, toys, or humble tools. History books often miss this practical genius. They prefer documents with signatures, but no signature is required to turn scarcity into usefulness. The hand knows things the archive forgets. Near the door, a woman adjusts a hanging cloth to soften the draught. It billows inward, then settles against the frame. The cloth is patched in several colours, none bright. Its movement makes the doorway seem alive, as if the cabin itself is trying to breathe warmer. You hear a low cough from the corner. It comes from an older man wrapped in a blanket. The cough is not dramatic, but everyone notices. Winter illness inside crowded. Smoky quarters could be dangerous, especially with poor nutrition and limited medical care. Enslaved healers often treated coughs, fevers, burns, childbirth pain, and injuries with plant knowledge. Some of that knowledge came from Africa, some from indigenous neighbours, and some from experience in southern environments. Scholars still debate how particular remedies travelled and changed across regions. The roots of knowledge are not always written down. A woman reaches for a small bundle of dried leaves. She crumbles a little into a cup and pours hot water over it. The steam rises with an earthy, bitter scent. It may not cure everything, but warmth itself is a form of care. The older man accepts the cup with both hands. His fingers close around it before he drinks. Perhaps the heat matters as much as the herb. Perhaps being tended matters most. The fire's glow reveals the roof beams. Soot darkens them, especially above the hearth. From one beam hangs a twist of cord with dried peppers or herbs. From another hangs a small cloth bundle tucked high, out of children's reach. You wonder what is inside. Needles. Perhaps a coin, if someone has managed to save one. A charm. A keepsake. A scrap of ribbon. A memory too small for anyone else to notice. Private property under slavery was always precarious. But people still kept private worlds. The cabin teaches you to look softly. Loud looking misses too much. A worn spot by the door means many departures. A polished rail on the bed means many hands rising at dawn. A dark stain near the hearth means years of cooking. The walls themselves seem to remember touch. Shoulders have leaned there after exhausting days. Children have scratched lines or shapes near the floor. Someone may have marked time, height, or nothing more serious than boredom. Even boredom deserves its place in history. A girl sits cross-legged by the fire, twisting fibres into a rough cord. Her fingers are quick despite her sleepiness. She pulls, rolls, tightens, and sets the cord aside. The motion has a rhythm like quiet music. Work continues inside the cabin because forced labour did not end with the field. Clothing needed mending, food needed cooking, tools needed fixing, children needed washing, soothing, scolding, and loving. The enslaved person's day often had a second day folded inside it. That second day belongs more to the people here, though not completely. Its tasks serve survival, family, community, and sometimes resistance. A repaired shoe may mean keeping pace tomorrow. A hidden seed may mean food later. A whispered warning may mean safety. The warmth grows uneven as the fire settles. Your face feels heated, but your back remains cool. One knee is comfortable, the other complains bitterly. Winter has no respect for symmetry. A small child rolls over on a pallet, pushing the quilt away. An adult gently pulls it back. The child mutters in sleep, then relaxes. The gesture is automatic and tender, practiced through many cold nights. You notice a wooden cradle near the wall. It is rough but carefully shaped, perhaps made by someone after a day of labour. Its rockers are uneven, yet serviceable. A baby sleeps inside, wrapped tightly against the chill. The cradle says something the plantation records may not say. It says someone imagined the baby's comfort. Someone spent time shaping wood for a child who owned nothing legally, not even herself. That care is a quiet rebellion against the logic of bondage. A bit of laughter rises near the hearth. It is soft, quickly covered, but real. Someone has told a small joke about an overseer slipping in mud. Perhaps. No one repeats it loudly. Even humour has to wear soft shoes. Gentle sarcasm lives easily in hard places. It gives the powerless a small knife made of wit. It cannot cut chains by itself. No. But it can cut through the ridiculous costume power likes to wear. The cabin's interior begins to feel less like a single room and more like a map. The hearth is the sun. The doorway is the northern wind. The pallets are low islands. The shelf is a tiny harbour of useful things. You shift your hand across the floor and feel grit, straw, and cold earth. The texture grounds you. It reminds you that warmth is being negotiated, not granted. Every inch closer to the fire is a decision made with others in mind. Nobody sprawls carelessly. Elbows are tucked. Knees are drawn in. Feet find corners where they will be stepped on least. Communal sleeping requires diplomacy, and the diplomats are very tired. A young man near the door removes his shoes, such as they are. The leather is stiff, worn, and cracked from damp ground. He sets them close enough to warm, but not close enough to scorch. This is wisdom learned the annoying way. The smell of warmed leather joins the room. It is sharp and earthy. Someone wrinkles a nose and someone else smiles. The fire accepts every offering, even unpleasant ones. You hear the wind search beneath the door again. It slides over the floor, thin and determined. The hanging cloth trembles. The flame leans away. then straightens, like a tired person refusing to be pushed. Outside, the plantation yard lies hard and pale beneath frost. Inside, the cabin keeps a pocket of life pressed around flame. The difference between outside and inside is not luxury. It is labour, knowledge, and care. You think of hands cutting wood, carrying water, daubing clay, stirring meal, patching cloth, rocking babies, and banking coals. None of these acts sounds heroic in a marble monument. Yet winter would be merciless without them. The room quiets by degrees. A cup is set down, a thread is knotted. The last bite of corn cake disappears. Someone murmurs a prayer so softly it becomes breath. The fire lowers again, but the coals glow steady beneath the ash. Their heat spreads slowly into the hearthstones and packed clay. That stored warmth will matter as the night deepens. Nothing useful is wasted, not even the memory of flame. You draw your blanket closer and feel its coarse weave against your neck. It scratches a little, but it holds heat. The smoke thins near the rafters, leaving the air dim and blue. Your eyelids grow heavier in the wavering light. Around you, the cabin has become a carefully made shelter inside an unjust world. Its walls are flawed, its roof imperfect, its floor hard. Still, every patched seam and shared blanket speaks of human hands shaping survival. The wind continues its argument outside, and the cabin answers with clay, cloth, wood, breath, and fire. It is not a victory exactly. It is enough for this hour. You listen to the last soft movements settle into stillness. The baby sleeps. The old man breathes more evenly. The children lie curled like commas beneath the quilt. The fire gives a final bright pop, scattering sparks behind the iron-black pot. Then the coals return to their red glow, patient and low. The little room holds its warmth carefully, as if warmth itself were a secret entrusted to everyone. You feel the hour sliding towards sleep, but the cabin is not ready for silence. The fire has softened, yet hands are still moving in its glow. Night has arrived. Yes, but rest has to wait its turn. There is always one more task, one more child, one more loose thread. A woman sits with a shirt across her lap, guiding a needle through torn cloth. The needle flashes whenever it catches the firelight. Her eyes narrow with careful effort. The cloth is coarse, and the tear runs near the shoulder, where tomorrow's work would pull it wider. She knots the thread with a quick motion of her fingers. The movement is small, almost invisible, but it carries experience. She knows how to make a repair last longer than it should. That is a science of its own. Near the hearth, another person scrapes a pot with a wooden spoon. The sound is dry and circular. Nothing clings to the iron without being noticed. In a room where hunger knows everyone's name, even a thin film of food deserves respect. The pot is set aside, not washed completely yet. Water must be carried, heated, saved, and carried again. Even cleaning has a cost. Modern convenience, that smug little monarch, would not last 10 minutes here without complaining. A young girl takes a gourd dipper and pours a little water into a smaller vessel. Her hands move slowly, guarding every splash. She rinses a child's face with damp cloth. The child frowns, because bedtime washing has apparently offended children across all centuries. The cloth touches skin with a cool stroke. Smoke and sweat lift faintly from the child's cheeks. Outside, the wind works at the shutters. Inside, the girl presses her lips together and finishes the task with quiet seriousness. Even after field labour, domestic labour continues in the quarters. Enslaved women especially carried heavy burdens of cooking, washing, sewing, nursing, and childcare. Men also repaired tools, cut wood, tended animals, made baskets, or helped with household needs. The night was not empty space, it was crowded with obligation. You watch a man near the doorway examine a hoe handle. The iron head has been removed, leaving the wood bare and worn. He turns the handle slowly, feeling for cracks. His thumb pauses at a split where the grain has begun to open. He reaches for a strip of rawhide or cord, then he wraps it tightly around the weakened place. The repair is simple, but steady. Tomorrow, someone may need that handle to hold. Tools in enslaved communities often had complicated meanings. They were instruments of forced labour, but also objects of skill and sometimes pride. A well-mended tool could spare the body needless pain. A hidden tool could help with garden work, repairs, or quiet acts of independence. Historians still argue how much skilled labour within plantations gave enslaved artisans leverage in daily life. Some gained small privileges, movement, or bargaining space. Others found their expertise only increased demands upon them. Skill could open a narrow door, but slavery kept its hand on the latch. A boy crouches by the fire, twisting straw into a rough bundle. He's not playing exactly, though there is a little play in it. His fingers learn by doing what older hands have shown him. The bundle may help start flame in the morning. Children in quarters absorbed work early. They fetched water, minded younger siblings, gathered kindling, shucked corn, drove animals, or carried messages. Childhood existed, but it was pressed by labour from many sides. Still, a child could steal a joke from a chore. Children are bold that way. The boy makes the straw bundle too loose. An older woman clicks her tongue softly and takes it from him. She tightens the twist, then hands it back. No sermon follows. The correction is enough. On the far side of the room, someone begins sorting small items into piles, a few beans, a little dried okra, a pinch of salt wrapped in cloth, perhaps seed saved for a garden patch. The movement is careful and almost ceremonial. Scarcity turns sorting into a kind of counting prayer. The salt draws your attention. Salt is ordinary until it is rare. It preserves food, sharpens flavour, and reminds the tongue that eating can be more than swallowing. In some quarters, salt, pepper, or fat might be guarded with almost comic intensity. There is a quirky tidbit in that little cloth packet. People sometimes used gourds, shells, hollowed bones, or tied rags as tiny containers for seasonings and seeds. A plantation ledger might not mention such things. The mouth would remember them perfectly. A young woman lifts a baby from the cradle and shifts the child against her shoulder. The baby roots sleepily, fusses, then settles. She rocks with a motion so slight it is almost only breath. Her own eyes are heavy, but her body continues the rhythm. Motherhood under slavery carried fear that no lullaby could fully hide. Children could be sold. Parents could be separated. Legal power rested with owners, not families. Yet the love in the room is not fragile just because the law is cruel. You hear water being poured near the corner. A woman rinses cloth used for the baby. The water darkens quickly. She wrings it hard, twisting until her wrists stand out. Then she hangs it near the warmth, where it will dry slowly through the night. Washing in winter is its own punishment. Cold water bites the fingers. Wet cloth steals heat from the skin. The smell of damp linen rises into the smoky room, fresh and sour together. It hangs in the air like weather brought indoors. Someone shifts a small wooden tub with a scrape across the floor. The sound seems too loud, and several eyes turn toward the door. Every noise is measured here. You learn that even ordinary household work must stay aware of danger. The room has rules no one needs to announce. Do not waste light. Do not wake the baby if you can help it. Do not let the fire die. Do not speak foolishly when walls are thin. Do not forget where the children are. A man bends over a pair of rough shoes, pushing a strip of leather through a broken side. Shoes issued to enslaved workers were often poor quality and infrequent. Bare feet and worn soles made cold. Mud, thorns, and long work days harder. A repair tonight may mean less pain tomorrow. The leather resists him. He mutters under his breath, not loudly enough to become trouble. His fingers work the strip through, then pull it tight. The shoe looks no prettier. It looks more useful, which is the better compliment here. A teenage girl grinds something with a small pestle in a wooden bowl. The dull tapping blends with the fire. Perhaps she's crushing dried herbs, salt, or parched corn. The scent that rises is warm and earthy, with a faint bitterness. Plantation households often depended on enslaved knowledge for daily tasks, including food preparation, building, nursing, and animal care. This dependence did not soften the system. It only revealed its hypocrisy. Those who claimed mastery often relied on the very people they degraded. The girl pauses and looks at the older woman nearby. The older woman nods once. The grinding continues. Knowledge moves that way, by glances and corrections, by repetition beside the fire. You notice the pace of the room slowing, not stopping. Every task approaches an ending. The mended shirt is folded. The hoe handle is leaned against the wall. The damp cloth is placed nearer the hearth, not too near the sparks. There is strategy in placement. Fire can warm, dry, light, cook, and destroy. People here respect it like a difficult relative. Useful, dramatic, and never to be trusted fully. A small child wakes suddenly and begins to cry. The sound is thin, startled, and exhausted. The nearest adult lifts the child quickly, pressing the little face against a shoulder. A hand pats the child's back, steady as a heartbeat. The crying fades into hiccups, then comes silence. The cabin seems to soften again around the child. No one complains, because everyone has been a child in need of warmth once. Though some were not allowed to enjoy it long, a whisper passes between two adults near the wall. They speak of someone on another plantation, perhaps a wife, husband, mother, or brother. Visiting between plantations could require permission, and the danger of travel was real. Yet enslaved people built networks across distance whenever possible. These networks carried news, courtship, kinship, warnings, faith, and rumour. They could stretch along roads, creeks, fields, markets, and church gatherings. A scrap of information might travel faster than an owner expected. Power rarely enjoys being outpaced by gossip. One person mentions a planned prayer meeting very softly. It might happen in a cabin, a clearing, or a hidden place when possible. Enslaved religious life varied widely, shaped by African traditions, Christianity, plantation control, and personal belief. Official preaching could serve obedience. Secret prayer could serve hope. Scholars continue to debate how enslaved people balanced Christianity taught by enslavers with their own interpretations of deliverance and justice. The debate matters, but the night makes one thing plain. People choose meanings that help them live. They do not simply receive meanings like empty cups. The fire dips, and a man adds another stick, not a large one. Large wood would burn too high and waste too quickly. He selects a modest piece and slides it under the coals. The flame catches along one edge, blue at first, then yellow. The room brightens enough to show faces again. You see tiredness, patience, irritation, affection, worry, and humour in passing glimpses. Human beings are never only tragic, even in tragic places. That truth is important, and also inconvenient for lazy storytelling. A woman near the door begins braiding a child's hair. Her fingers move through the strands with light pressure. The child sits between her knees, nearly asleep. Each section is parted, smoothed, and crossed into place. Hair care is intimate work. It is practical, keeping hair protected through labour and weather. It is also social, carrying style, tenderness, identity, and patience. The child's head tips forward, and the woman gently lifts it back. The smell of hair warmed by the fire mixes with smoke and cornmeal. The child's scalp shines faintly in the low light. Outside, wind hisses through frozen grass. Inside, fingertips continue their small order against the chaos. A man takes a carved bit of wood from a shelf. It might be part of a toy, a peg, a handle, or something not yet finished. He smooths it with a piece of broken glass. The scraping sound is soft, almost delicate. Broken glass as a tool feels surprising, but it makes practical sense. A sharp shard can scrape wood smoother than a dull knife. People used what they had. because waiting for proper equipment was a luxury for people whose lives were controlled by others. Ingenuity, again, arrives wearing plain clothes. The object becomes rounder under his hand. He tests it with his thumb, scrapes again, then sets it aside. Perhaps a child will find it in daylight and know who made it. Perhaps no one will mention it. Not all tenderness announces itself. The last household tasks begin to turn towards sleep. The needle is pushed into cloth for safekeeping. The water vessel is moved where no sleepy foot will kick it. The pot is placed upside down to keep pests away, because even mice enjoy historical accuracy. A quiet laugh rises as something whispered by the hearth. It dies quickly, but leaves warmth behind. Laughter at night has a special softness. It belongs to those close enough to hear it. The air grows thicker as the fire burns low. Smoke clings to the roof and slips through the chimney in lazy strands. Your eyes sting faintly, then adjust again. The cabin smells lived in from floor to rafters. You feel the weight of all that has been done since sunset. None of it appears in plantation wealth as anything separate from labour. Yet without these hidden hours, no household could survive. The work of care is often treated as background, which is exactly how careless people reveal themselves. Someone steps briefly outside with a pail. The door opens, and cold rushes in like an insult. Everyone nearest the entrance tightens shoulders. The person returns quickly, bringing the smell of frost, mud, and darkness. The door shuts with a dull wooden thud. The hanging cloth settles again. Warmth begins its slow repair of the room. You can almost feel the fire gathering the scattered edges of comfort back together. A final check moves through the cabin. Is the baby covered? Is the ember banked? Is the shirt folded where it can be found before light? Is the tool near the door? Are the children close enough to share warmth? No one writes the list. The list lives in bodies. It has lived there so long that forgetting would feel unnatural. Exhaustion does not erase discipline. The woman who braided the child's hair ties the end with a bit of thread. She smooths the braid once, then lets the child crawl toward the pallet. The child collapses beside another small body and is asleep almost instantly. That is a talent adults mourn quietly. The older man finishes his warm drink and sets the cup down. His cough returns once, softer now. He folds both hands over his chest and leans back against the wall. The firelight catches the side of his face, then slides away. You stretch your fingers toward the heat. The skin on your knuckles feels dry from smoke and cold. The warmth is uneven, but welcome. The night's work has left the room changed, tidier in small ways, safer in small ways, ready enough. Outside, the wind keeps moving over the plantation. It passes the fields, the fences, the animal pens, the sleeping trees. It finds the cabin and presses its cold face to the cracks. The room resists with cloth, clay, ash, wood, and human care. The final voices lower into murmurs, a prayer, a reminder, a name, a warning, a good night. The words are not grand. They are better than grand. They are useful and alive, at last. The tasks give way, not because everything is finished, but because bodies have limits. The room accepts this with a hush. Even duty, eventually, must close its eyes. The fire glows beneath its blanket of ash. The mended shirt waits for morning. The repaired handle leans in shadow. The damp cloth steams faintly, releasing the smell of smoke and clean water. You rest in the dimness while the cabin settles around you. The little works of night have stitched the room together. Nothing here has been wasted. Nothing here has been easy. A final cold shifts and sends a low red shimmer across the floor. For one breath, you can see every sleeping shape, every folded tool, every hand finally still. Then the glow softens, and the cabin returns to shadow. You sit near the hearth as the last food of the night becomes more than food. The fire has dropped low, but a small red glow still holds beneath grey ash. Someone stirs it gently with a charred stick, opening a pocket of heat. The embers brighten, and the room answers with a slow golden breath. A covered bowl is brought closer to the warmth. Inside are bits of leftover corn cake, softened with a little hot water. The mixture is plain, but steam rises from it with a comforting smell. Hunger does not require decoration. It only asks to be treated seriously. A woman adds a pinch of salt from a tied cloth. The gesture is careful, almost elegant. Salt falls in a brief pale stream, then disappears. Everyone notices, because seasoning is small magic when the cupboard is almost imaginary. Food in quarters often came from a difficult mixture of rations and personal effort. Enslaved people might receive cornmeal, salt pork, or other basics from plantation stores. These rations were usually limited and controlled. Gardens, fishing, trapping, foraging, and small livestock could help fill the gaps. You can feel the importance of those gaps. A few greens could change a meal. A sweet potato tucked in ash could become comfort. A rabbit caught near a creek might feel like a feast, though the rabbit probably held a different opinion. The hearth carries the history of many hands. It has warmed iron pots, roasted roots, dried wet socks, smoked meat, and quieted crying children. Its stones are darkened by spilled broth and soot. The floor nearby is polished by knees, heels, and patient waiting. A young man takes a piece of wood and nudges ash over a buried potato. Its skin has blackened in the heat, but the inside will be soft. When he rolls it free, it steams through a crack like a tiny chimney. Someone laughs softly at the sight. The smell is sweet and earthy. It spreads through the cabin faster than speech. Sweet potatoes grew well in parts of the South and became important food for many enslaved households. They could be roasted, mashed, sliced, dried, or hidden carefully from greedy eyes. The potato is broken open. Orange flesh glows in the firelight. A child receives the first small piece, blowing on it with exaggerated caution. The steam touches the child's nose, and everyone pretends not to watch too fondly. There is tenderness in sharing hot food at night. It passes from hand to hand, warming fingers before it warms the stomach. The skin is rough, the flesh soft, and the heat almost too much. You hold a piece and feel it press warmth into your palm. The taste is simple, sweet, smoky, and slightly bitter from the charred skin. It carries the ash bed where it rested and the soil where it grew. In that taste, you sense labour, weather, patience, and luck. A meal is never only what sits in the bowl. Across the room, someone speaks quietly of a garden patch behind a cabin. These small plots were sometimes allowed because they reduced the owner's costs, which is an extremely bleak reason to permit vegetables. Yet people use such spaces creatively. They grew beans, corn, greens, gourds, peppers, herbs, and root crops when possible. Gardens could become places of care and knowledge. Seeds were saved, traded, hidden, and remembered. Planting patterns could reflect African traditions, local experience, and personal preference. A row of beans might look ordinary to a passerby. To the planter, it could be a calendar, a pantry, and a claim. Historians still argue how much autonomy garden plots truly offered. Some see them as narrow spaces of independence within brutal control. Others warn that such plots also forced enslaved people to feed themselves after exhausting labour. Both views can sit beside the same furrow. History, unhelpfully, enjoys making comfort complicated. A woman lifts the lid from a small pot. Inside are greens cooked down until they cling together dark and glossy. Their smell is mineral, smoky, and faintly sharp. Maybe there is a sliver of fat in them, or maybe imagination provides it kindly. Greens can taste like survival when cooked patiently. Turnip greens, collards, mustard greens, wild plants, and gathered herbs all had roles in southern foodways. Enslaved cooks shaped flavours from available ingredients and deep practical knowledge. The result was not a simple story of poverty, it was invention under pressure. You watch as the greens are portioned onto a wooden plate. The plate has knife marks across its surface, each cut holding a black thread of age. Fingers move carefully. Nobody heaps food in a careless mound. The portions are modest, but the attention is generous. A small clay jar appears from the shadowed shelf. It holds pepper vinegar, perhaps, or something close to it. Hot peppers soaked in vinegar could brighten plain food and wake a tired mouth. The jar is passed once, then tucked away again. Fire for the tongue, fire for the room. That little pepper jar feels almost mischievous. Flavour is not obedience. A sharp taste can make the eyes widen and the spirit sit upright. Even a tiny pepper can arrive at supper with more personality than an overseer, which is honestly not hard. Food also carries memory. You hear someone mention okra in a sleepy voice. Okra came to the Americas through the Atlantic world, linked to African food traditions. Rice, black-eyed peas, watermelon, sesame, and certain cooking methods also connect to African influence, though each travelled through complex routes. The words around the fire are casual, but memory lives inside them. A grandmother might remember a preparation learned from her mother. A cook in the big house might adapt forced labour into guarded expertise. A child might learn by smell before ever learning by instruction. The hearth becomes a school without benches. You learn which wood smokes too much. You learn how to stretch cornmeal. You learn when a pot is hot by hovering your palm above it. You learn that hunger makes people serious, but sharing keeps them human. A woman breaks a dried pepper with her fingernail. The scent rises bright and sharp enough to sting your nose. A child sneezes, and several adults smile without looking directly. The pepper is crushed into the greens, and the room seems warmer just from imagining it. The pot gives off a soft bubbling sound. It is not a full boil, only a thick simmer. The sound is drowsy and steady. It wraps around the room like a low song with no words. Outside, the wind touches the cabin walls, but inside the smells deepen. Corn, smoke, greens, ash, leather, wool, damp earth, and the sweetness of roasted potato mingle together. The atmosphere is close, but alive. You breathe it in slowly, and it settles behind your ribs. Cooking in enslaved communities was never separate from power. Many enslaved cooks prepared elaborate meals for owners, then returned to cabins where their own food was limited. They might know delicate pastries, sauces, preserved fruits, and roasted meats, yet have only cornmeal for their families. That contrast is cruel enough to need no extra decoration. Still, skill belonged to the cook. Knowledge could be demanded, but not fully owned. The hand that seasons knows timing, heat, texture, and transformation. A bad system can command a meal. It cannot make itself wise. Near the hearth, an older woman explains how to save embers beneath ash. Her voice is soft and plain, meant for a younger listener. She describes leaving the coals covered enough to breathe but not enough to die. Fire needs air, but not too much. People understand that. The younger listener nods, eyes heavy. Maybe she already knows. Maybe the lesson is being repeated because repetition is how knowledge survives exhaustion. The older woman taps the ash with the stick, then leaves the coals glowing low. You notice a few dried corn husks tied above the hearth. They rustle whenever warm air rises. Corn husks can wrap food, stuff mattresses, make dolls, scrub pots, or help start fires. They're humble things with crowded resumes. A child reaches toward a husk doll on the shelf. It has no face, only a tied head and folded arms. Such dolls were common in many rural households, made from scraps, husks, or cloth. This one is worn soft at the edges. It has clearly been loved into exhaustion. The child holds it while chewing slowly. A doll, a hot bite, and a fire can make a small kingdom. The kingdom is fragile, yes, but for a few minutes, its ruler seems satisfied. A man tells of catching fish in a creek during a warmer season. His words are low, but the children lean closer. He describes the water shining under roots, the quick flash of a fish, the cold pull on the line. You can almost smell mud, algae, and crushed leaves. Fishing gave some enslaved people a way to supplement food and share with others. Traps, lines, nets, and hand skills mattered, especially near rivers and creeks. Permission and patrols could complicate movement, but hunger has always been a persuasive strategist. It studies maps very carefully. The man smiles at his own memory. He does not make himself a hero. He only describes a fish so large it becomes suspicious. Someone snorts softly, and the room enjoys the exaggeration. Bedtime history must allow one enormous fish. It is only fair. The conversation drifts toward a remembered taste of possum, rabbit, squirrel, or wild turkey. Hunting and trapping could supplement diets, though access depended on place and risk. The smells described seem to enter the room, though no meat is there now. Memory cooks with invisible ingredients. You feel how food talk changes the atmosphere. People who have been guarded all evening become a little more animated. They compare methods, mock bad cooks, praise good peppers, and remember harvests. The room becomes warmer through description alone. A woman says that some people put ashes around stored food to keep insects away. Another mentions hanging gourds high from rafters. A third says a clever rat will respect neither ash nor architecture. This receives a tiny ripple of laughter. The rat, apparently, is a scholar of theft. Quirky household defences against pests were part of daily survival. Food could be hung from cords, stored in sealed gourds, buried, covered with cloth, or watched with irritation. A mouse hole near a hearth might become a battlefield. The weapons were traps, cats, patience, and insults whispered in the dark. The remaining greens are scraped from the pot. A spoon gathers each dark strand. The pot bottom shows through, shining wetly in the firelight. It will need soaking if water can be spared. Nothing ends neatly. Someone takes the last smear with a piece of corn cake. The motion is quick but not greedy. It is accepted. Leaving food behind would be almost rude to the labour that made it. You think about the hands that planted corn, harvested it, shelled it, ground it, mixed it, cooked it, and divided it. You think about the hands that gathered greens, washed grit away, and watched the pot. A single bite contains a whole chain of effort. The mouth receives what many hours prepared. A sleepy prayer rises before the final dishes are set aside. The words are not loud. They bless food already eaten, bodies still tired, children already sinking toward dreams. The prayer may carry Christian language, African cadence, private sorrow, and practical gratitude. It asks for enough. Enough is a small word with a large shadow. Enough warmth, enough food, enough strength for morning, enough luck to stay together, enough mercy to make another night bearable. The hearthlight touches the emptied bowl. Its inside is streaked with cornmeal and broth. A woman wipes it with a damp cloth, then sets it upside down on a shelf. The action is ordinary and graceful. Cleanliness here is not vanity. It is protection. The smell of food begins to fade, leaving smoke and ash stronger again. Your stomach feels warmer, even from only imagining the shared meal. Your fingers remember the sweet potato's heat. Your tongue remembers salt and pepper, though they were modest visitors. The fire settles into a quieter red. The pot hangs dark and still. The shelf holds its jars and cloth packets like sleeping secrets. The room has been fed as much as possible, not filled, but steadied. You lean back and let the atmosphere thicken around you. Food, smoke, and memory have made the cabin feel larger than its walls. A garden patch, a creek, a distant recipe, an old seed, and a pepper jar all seem present. The hearth gathers them without asking for proof. Outside, the night remains hard and cold. Inside, the last warmth of supper moves slowly through tired bodies. It is not enough to change the world. It is enough to soften this hour. A child licks sweet potato from one finger and finally gives in to sleep. An adult removes the husk doll from the child's loosening hand and places it nearby. The gesture is quiet, careful, and almost invisible. It belongs to the long history of being gentle when no one powerful is watching. The coals glow lower, red under grey. The bowl is clean. The pepper jar is hidden. The last scent of greens drifts upward and vanishes into smoke. You sit with the taste of survival in the air. It is smoky, plain, bitter, sweet, and warm. It does not pretend to be plenty. It simply refuses to be nothing. You listen as the cabin's voices shift from chores and food into something softer. The fire no longer commands the room with brightness, but it still gives enough light for faces. Shadows sit in the corners like patient guests. The night has found its listening posture. A child asks for a story, though the request is almost a whisper. The adults pretend not to hear at first. This is an ancient ceremony, older than cabins, older than plantations, older than any kingdom that believed itself important. The child waits, because children understand negotiation surprisingly well. At last, an older woman clears her throat. The sound is small, dry, and deliberate. She looks toward the hearth, not the children. That is how you know the story's beginning. True storytellers rarely need to announce themselves. Her voice starts low, sliding between the crackle of coals and the sigh of wind. She speaks of a rabbit with no strength worth bragging about. The rabbit lives near a field owned by a larger animal, one with teeth, claws, and terrible manners. Everyone understands the arrangement immediately. The children lean closer, eyes shining in the dimness. The adults keep their faces calm, though one man's mouth lifts slightly. A trickster tale can wear an animal's skin and still walk straight through human trouble. That is part of its genius. The rabbit wants food, warmth, and peace. The larger animal wants obedience, which is always less charming than powerful creatures imagine. The rabbit smiles, bows, flatters, and watches. He learns where the big animal steps heavily. He learns when pride makes the big animal stupid. The older woman pauses just long enough for the fire to pop. The children wait in complete stillness. Even the wind seems to lean toward the wall. A good pause is half the story. Some people should remember that before giving speeches. Animal tales among enslaved communities carried entertainment, memory, and instruction together. Stories of Brer Rabbit and other clever figures became widely known in the South, though their roots and forms were diverse. Some motifs connect to West and Central African traditions, while others change through native European and American settings. Oral tradition is a river, not a jar. The rabbit in the story finds a way to make the larger animal chase his own shadow. He leads him near a pond glazed with moonlight. He tells him another powerful creature waits below the water, mocking him silently. The larger animal sees his reflection and believes the insult. A child almost laughs too early. An adult gently taps his knee. Wait. Timing matters. Even in comedy, patience earns the meal. The larger animal strikes the water and tumbles in. Cold mud rises. Reeds shake. Frogs scatter with excellent judgment. The rabbit escapes with a sack of something useful. Perhaps peas, perhaps corn, perhaps just dignity dressed as groceries. Now the children laugh, but softly. The adults allow themselves a few quiet breaths of amusement. The cabin warms in a different way. Laughter does not fill the stomach, sadly, but it does feed something that hunger cannot reach. You notice how no one explains the meaning. Nobody says power can be fooled by pride. Nobody says small people must use wit where force is denied. The lesson is safer when it wears fur. The children understand enough. A younger woman takes over with another tale, her voice smoother and quicker. She tells of a turtle who carries wisdom in a clay pot. The turtle wants to keep all wisdom for himself, which is already a suspicious decision. Wisdom locked away tends to become nonsense with better posture. The turtle ties the pot to his belly and tries to climb a tree. Naturally, it gets in the way. His child watches from below and suggests tying the pot to his back instead. The turtle realizes someone else has wisdom too, becomes angry, and drops the pot. Wisdom spills everywhere. Someone near the doorway murmurs that this explains a great deal. A few shoulders shake. The joke is soft but sharp. The room enjoys it without becoming careless. Stories like these did not simply pass time. They taught children how to read the world sideways. They warned against arrogance, praised cunning, mocked greed, and kept memory moving, in a place where open criticism could be dangerous. Story carried hidden lanterns. Historians still debate how directly certain African tales survived in enslaved communities. Some scholars trace figures like the spider, rabbit, or tortoise to African narrative patterns. Others emphasize how stories adapted in American conditions and mixed with many influences. The uncertainty does not weaken them. It shows they were alive. A man near the hearth adds a brief memory of a tale he heard from his mother. His voice is lower, roughened by fatigue. He cannot remember every part. He admits this with a shrug. Another person supplies a missing phrase, and the story repairs itself in the air. That is how oral tradition breathes. One person forgets. Another remembers. A third changes the ending because the old one needs better sense, or because everyone enjoys making a fox look foolish. The story survives by accepting help. Above you, the rafters hold smoke and shadow. The hanging herbs sway faintly when the wind pushes through the cracks. Beneath them, the listeners form a circle without needing to move. Their attention is the circle. The hearth is merely polite enough to mark the centre. A child asks whether the rabbit was afraid. The older woman looks at the child for the first time. She says every living creature with sense is afraid sometimes. Then she adds that fear need not do the walking. The room grows quiet around that sentence. You feel the words settle. They do not sound grand, but they are heavy with use. Fear is not denied here. It is known, named, and given a smaller chair. That may be all courage is some nights. Another voice begins humming under the story's ending. The tune is narrow, almost private. It rises and falls in a pattern that feels older than the words around it. Soon, two others join softly, but the sound remains low enough to stay hidden inside the cabin. Music among enslaved people served many purposes. It marked work rhythms, grief, worship, celebration, coded feeling, and communal strength. The call and response pattern, with one voice leading and others answering, became especially powerful in many black musical traditions. It allowed the group to breathe together. Here, the response is not loud. A line is hummed. Another voice answers with a softer phrase. The fire crackles between them like a third participant, though a slightly unreliable one. Smoke thickens and curls upward. The song may carry biblical images of rivers, home, wandering, deliverance, and rest. It may also carry older rhythms beneath newer words. Enslaved spirituals often transformed Christian language into songs of sorrow, endurance, and hope. A promise of freedom in heaven could also whisper about freedom on earth. The people in the cabin know how to layer meaning. They have had to learn. A word can face one direction for an owner and another direction for the community. A song can sound obedient to careless ears while carrying a whole road inside it. A quirky custom appears in the way someone taps the rhythm. A woman uses 2 fingers on the side of a gourd bowl, not loudly, just enough to mark the pulse. In some communities, patting juba, clapping, foot tapping, and body percussion carried rhythm when drums were restricted or discouraged. The body became the instrument nobody could easily confiscate. The tapping is gentle, tap, pause, tap, tap. A child imitates it on a knee. The adult gives a faint smile, then adjusts the pattern. The child tries again. Teaching happens in miniature, hidden inside sound. You feel the rhythm enter your shoulders. It is not a dance now, not in this cold and crowded room. It is a memory of movement. It lets the body remember that it is more than a tool of labour. It can answer music. One elderly man begins a tale that is not funny. The room shifts to receive it. He speaks of a journey across water, but not with clear dates or names. His words are fragments, inherited from someone who heard from someone else. The ocean appears as vast darkness, salt, sickness, fear, and separation. No child interrupts this story. Even the youngest seem to sense its weight. The man does not make it cruel in detail. He keeps it simple, because some things need no decoration. A ship, a loss, a language broken, a shore that did not mean welcome. The transatlantic slave trade had officially ended in United States law decades earlier, but its memory remained alive in families and communities. Many enslaved people in 1840 were American-born, yet Africa lived on through names, rhythms, foodways, beliefs, and stories. Memory can outlast the papers that try to erase it. He stops speaking suddenly, as if the path ends at the edge of the firelight. No one fills the silence right away. The wind moves outside, pressing cold against the wall. A coal collapses with a soft sigh. Then the older woman begins another story, gentler but not empty. She speaks of a bird that loses its song in a storm. The bird searches trees, fields, chimneys, and river reeds. At last, it hears its song coming from many other birds at once. The children relax as the tale unfolds. The bird learns that what is shared is not always lost. Its song returns larger than before, though the bird remains small. This seems to satisfy everyone. It satisfies you too. You breathe in the smoky air and understand that stories make the room less narrow. The cabin walls remain close, but imagination opens spaces no overseer can measure. A tale can move to Africa, to a river, to a fox's den, to heaven, to a future unnamed. It travels without a pass. Of course, stories could not remove danger. They could not prevent sail, hunger, illness, or punishment. But they could preserve a self within those dangers. That is not a small thing. It is actually enormous, though it sits quietly beside the hearth. A child asks for one more. Several adults make soft sounds of refusal. The child begins the ancient legal appeal of widening the eyes. This method has enjoyed mixed success across human history. Tonight, it works only partly. The older woman offers a riddle instead. She asks what has a mouth but never eats, runs but never walks, and talks without a tongue. The children frown with theatrical seriousness. Someone whispers, "creak." The answer is accepted with a nod. Riddles sharpened attention, memory, and language. They also gave children a way to practice cleverness safely. In enslaved communities, verbal skill mattered. Knowing when to speak, how to speak, and what not to reveal could protect a life. The riddle invites more. A boy asks what sleeps all day and sings all night. Someone says a fiddle. Someone else says a mosquito, and the room nearly breaks into laughter. The mosquito answer is unpopular, but historically convincing. The laughter fades into humming again. This time the song is more like a lullaby. Its words are hard to catch, shaped by breath and drowsiness. The melody rocks gently, as if carrying a cradle through darkness. You feel the children begin to sink, heads lower onto folded arms. A small hand opens on the quilt. The husk doll lies on its side, nobly defeated by bedtime. The adults keep singing a little longer than necessary. A song can guard the edge of sleep. It smooths the path from watchfulness to dreaming. It tells the body that others are nearby. It tells the mind, for a few minutes, that it may loosen its grip. The older woman's face is half lit by the coals. Her mouth barely moves now, but the tune continues. You sense that she has carried many stories through many winters. Some were given to her, some she changed, some she may have created because a child needed courage. The room sound becomes layered and soft. Wind at the walls, breath in the dark, cloth shifting over straw, a final tap on the gourd bowl, the low thread of song under everything. The stories have done their work. They have entertained, instructed, comforted, warned, remembered, and gently mocked the mighty. Very efficient, really. A whole library has visited the cabin without needing shelves. You sit in the fading glow and let the last tale dissolve. The rabbit escapes into brush. The turtle's wisdom scatters. The bird finds its song. The creek runs with a mouth that never eats. All of them remain in the air, quiet as smoke. The fire is almost hidden beneath ash now. The storytellers grow still. The children sleep with the serious expressions of small judges who have approved the evening. Outside, the winter wind keeps moving, but inside, the rafters hold voices that refuse to vanish. A final hum lingers after the singing stops. It seems to rest against the walls, faint and warm. You close your eyes and hear it continue, though no one is singing anymore. That is how a good story leaves the room. You feel the cabin slowly rearrange itself for sleep, as if the room knows an old pattern. Voices fall away, one by one, until movement becomes the only language. A blanket is lifted, a pallet is spread, a child is guided by sleepy hands toward the warmest place. The fire gives just enough light to make the floor visible. Shadows hide the corners, but the centre remains softly red. People move carefully through the narrow space, stepping around bowls, shoes, tools, and curled bodies. No one has the luxury of wandering thoughtlessly. A woman shakes out a quilt with a quick snap of her wrists. Dust and smoke rise faintly from it. The quilt settles over a straw pallet near the wall, patched with pieces from worn shirts and old dresses. Each square seems to carry a different kind of tiredness. The cloth has been washed, smoked, slept under, folded, repaired, and used again. Its colours have faded into gentle browns, dull blues, and greyish creams. Nothing matches perfectly. Matching is a hobby for people with spare cloth and spare opinions. You notice the stitches along one patch. They're uneven in one corner, then neater toward the middle. Perhaps a child was learning there. Perhaps tired eyes worked by firelight. The quilt becomes a record, not written in ink, but in effort. Textiles mattered deeply in enslaved households. Clothing and bedding were often issued in limited quantities, sometimes seasonally, sometimes poorly, and often without enough warmth. People stretched cloth through mending, trading, dyeing, cutting down adult garments for children, and saving every usable scrap. A rag could be small, but its usefulness could be enormous. A man lifts a mattress made from corn shucks and shakes it once. It gives off a dry rustling sound, like leaves in a covered ditch. The stuffing has gathered in uneven ridges. He kneads it with both hands, spreading the lumps as best he can. Such mattresses were practical but rough. Corn shucks, straw, moss, or grass could provide a little insulation from the floor. They flattened, shifted, and sometimes attracted insects. Still, a stuffed mattress was better than cold earth, and better matted. The children are placed first. One little body curls near the hearth, though not close enough for sparks. Another is tucked beside an older sibling. A baby is wrapped tightly and laid near its mother's side. The arrangement is careful, with warmth passing from body to body. You watch a girl pretend she's not asleep while being moved. Her head lolls against a shoulder. The adult carrying her lowers her onto the pallet, and the girl immediately reaches for the quilt. Sleep has its own honesty. The sleeping space reveals kinship, but also the strain placed upon it. Families under slavery created bonds of marriage, parenthood, grandparenthood, godparenthood, and chosen relation. These bonds were real, meaningful, and widely recognized within enslaved communities. The law, however, refused to protect them in any reliable way. That refusal haunts the room. You see it in the way adults count children with their eyes. You see it in the way someone leaves space for a person not present. You see it in quiet names spoken only once, then swallowed by darkness. A woman spreads a smaller cloth near the wall for herself. She presses it down with both palms, smoothing straw beneath it. Her movements are efficient, not fussy. She has done this enough times to know exactly how little comfort can be persuaded from the floor. The floor is cold through everything. Even layers of straw and cloth cannot fully stop it. The chill rises with patient confidence, finding hips, shoulders, and knees. You feel it through your own bedding as you lower yourself closer to the ground. A rope bed stands near one side of the cabin. It is shared by adults whose bodies have earned something softer, though softer is a generous word. The ropes beneath the bedding sag slightly. Tightening them would help, but rope wears, stretches, and breaks. The phrase "sleep tight" comes from beds that used rope supports. According to a popular explanation, some historians accept parts of this, while others are cautious about the phrase's exact origin. Language, like an old mattress, has lumps in inconvenient places. Still, the image is memorable. A man sits on the edge of the bed and removes a cloth from around his neck. His shoulders slump once the task is done. The firelight catches the shape of his back beneath his shirt. It is a back that has carried hours, weather, tools, and command. His wife, or the woman everyone knows as his wife, lies down beside him. Their marriage may be honoured by family, community, and faith. Yet in the eyes of Alabama law, enslaved marriage has no full legal standing. Love lives here without the protection it deserves. You feel the cruelty of that in the quiet. No dramatic speech is needed. A shared bed, a shared child, a shared life, and still no legal shield. The room itself seems to know the unfairness and softens around them as best it can. On the floor, two boys negotiate space with elbows and whispers. One claims the other is taking more quilt. The other claims innocence in the deeply unconvincing manner of siblings everywhere. An older voice tells them to hush. Peace returns, though not justice. A young child sleeps with one foot exposed. Someone notices quickly and covers it. Cold feet can wake a child, and a waking child can wake the cabin. Practical tenderness often begins as prevention. It remains tenderness anyway. You notice how bodies form a pattern of heat. The smallest are placed between larger bodies when possible. Older people angle themselves away from the worst drafts. Those near the door use extra cloth if any exists. The cabin becomes a map of mutual protection. Sleeping arrangements in slave quarters varied widely. Some cabins held nuclear families, though slavery constantly threatened that stability. Others held extended kin, unrelated workers, or crowded groups shaped by plantation needs. On larger plantations, quarters could form small communities with their own social order. On smaller farms, living arrangements might be even more intimate and watched. Historians still argue over how much privacy enslaved families could claim within quarters. Some accounts describe family cabins that allowed meaningful domestic space. Others emphasize crowding, surveillance, and intrusion. The truth changes by plantation, owner, region, season, and luck. Privacy here is not a right. It is a fragile achievement. A woman places a piece of wood across the bottom of the door to block a draught. Then she tucks old cloth along the threshold. Her fingers move in the dark with sure knowledge. She pats the cloth once, as if sealing a wound. Near the hearth, the oldest woman takes the place closest to the coals, not because she's selfish, but because age aches more loudly in cold weather. Her knees are wrapped in cloth. Her hands rest beneath her arms, searching for warmth. No one challenges her place. Respect is part of the arrangement, but so is practicality. She may be the keeper of stories, medicines, births, names, and warnings. A community protects its living archive when it can. Also, sore knees are persuasive. A small bundle is set beside her head. It might contain personal things, perhaps a kerchief, a charm, a little tobacco, a comb, or thread. Enslaved people could own few possessions, and those possessions were vulnerable. Still, personal bundles mattered. They created a small border around the self. You think of how much a person can carry in almost nothing. A ribbon from someone sold away, a button from a lost coat, A seed from a mother's garden, a shell touched during prayer. A scrap becomes a room inside the mind. The cabin grows quieter but not silent. Straw whispers under shifting bodies. Cloth rasps against rough skin. Someone sniffles. Someone sighs. The baby makes a soft clicking sound with its mouth, then settles again against warmth. You lie near the wall and feel the boards behind you. The cold comes through them in narrow lines. Your blanket smells of smoke, old wool, and human sleep. It scratches at your chin, but you pull it higher anyway. A man whispers a name in the dark. It is answered from another pallet. Then another name, softer. It may be a simple check that everyone is settled. It may also be a roll call against fear. Each answer is a small lantern. Family separation was one of slavery's sharpest cruelties. Sales, debts, inheritance divisions, punishment, and owner decisions could divide parents, children, spouses, and siblings. Enslaved people responded by forming broad kin networks, honouring marriages, naming children after loved ones, and keeping memory alive through speech. The family tree had to grow even where axes waited. A woman murmurs to a child who asks where someone is. Her answer is gentle, but not complete. She says the person is with kin elsewhere. She says sleep now. The child accepts the answer because sleep is stronger than the uncertainty tonight. You feel how much is hidden beneath calm words. Adults protect children with partial truths when full truth would be too heavy. That is not deception in any simple sense. It is mercy with a tired voice. On the rope bed, the couple shifts closer beneath one blanket. Their feet likely remain cold. Their shoulders touch. Their breathing gradually finds a shared pace. In a world that denies their claims, this closeness becomes testimony. A teenage girl lies awake near the hearth, eyes open toward the rafters. Perhaps she's thinking of someone on another plantation. Perhaps she's listening for footsteps. Perhaps she's simply unable to surrender to sleep. Night can be gentle and still refuse to be easy. A younger child beside her reaches blindly and finds her sleeve. The girl's face softens. She places the child's hand back beneath the quilt, then leaves her own hand near enough to be found again. There is care in remaining reachable. Quirky bedtime habits appear in small forms. Someone keeps a warmed stone wrapped in cloth near the feet. Someone else tucks dry leaves between bedding layers for extra insulation. A bit of ash may be rubbed near a crack to mark where cold air enters. Human beings will invent 1,000 defences before admitting winter has won. The warmed stone especially draws your attention. It holds heat from the hearth and releases it slowly. It is not elegant. It is effective. Elegance is lovely, but toes vote for effectiveness every time. You hear an older voice caution a child not to kick the stone loose. The child gives no answer, already asleep or pretending well. The stone remains tucked near small feet. The quilt rises and falls with breathing. The room darkens further as the coals sink. Each sleeping shape becomes less separate from the others. A shoulder, a braid, a hand, a bent knee, a wrapped infant, a lined face. The cabin becomes a single breathing creature made from many lives. Touch is everywhere, but not always comfortable. Bodies press together because warmth demands it. Privacy thins. Dreams bump against one another. A person may wake with someone's elbow in the ribs and call that the good version of the night. Still, touch can also reassure. A mother feels the baby's warmth. A child finds a sibling's back. An elder hears breathing nearby. The body learns that it has not been left alone in the cold. Outside, the wind drags across the roof and rattles a loose piece of wood. Several people stir, then settle when nothing follows. Even sleep here is trained to listen. It rises quickly to the surface, checks the danger, and sinks again. You begin to understand that rest under slavery is never only physical. The body sleeps while the mind keeps a small watchfire. It listens for weather, illness, animals, patrols, commands, and crying children. True rest is made difficult when safety is uncertain. Yet sleep comes anyway. It enters through exhaustion, through warmth, through song remembered in the chest, through the weight of quilts. It does not ask whether conditions are ideal. Sleep has never waited for justice, which is rather rude of it, but sometimes merciful. A woman whispers a final blessing over the children. Her words are barely shaped. They might be prayer, habit, or both. The fire answers with a red flicker beneath the ash. The cabin holds the sound carefully. You close your eyes and feel the packed earth beneath the bedding. It is hard, cold, and real. Above you, smoke stains the roof. Around you, people breathe in different rhythms, making a soft, uneven music. The quilt over your shoulder grows warmer where your breath touches it. A strand of straw tickles your wrist. The air smells of ash, cloth, skin, and the faint sweetness of dried corn husks. The atmosphere presses close, neither comfortable nor empty. You think of all the bonds gathered here, some named and some chosen. Grandmother, father, auntie, cousin, wife, husband, child, friend, neighbour, helper, witness. Slavery tries to reduce people to labour. The sleeping room contradicts it without making noise. A final child turns over and nestles into the curve of an older body. The older body shifts automatically, making space even in sleep. That unconscious kindness says more than a speech could. It is love practiced so often that even dreams remember. The fire is now mostly hidden. The warm stone rests at small feet. The rope bed creaks once, then stills. The quilts lie in patched layers across the room, holding what warmth they can. You breathe slowly with the others. The wind has not stopped. The cold has not disappeared. The world outside remains what it is. But inside the cabin, bodies have gathered into a shelter made of kinship, cloth, straw, and stubborn care. You wake slightly to the feeling of cold moving through the cabin like water. It does not arrive all at once. It seeps, measures, tests, and returns. The fire still glows beneath its ash, but the wind has grown bolder outside the walls. At first, the cold touches only your nose, then it reaches the edge of your blanket and slides beneath with unpleasant cleverness. Your shoulders tighten before you're fully awake. The body notices weather before the mind finishes its little speech about being brave. A narrow draught crosses the floor from one corner to another. You cannot see it clearly, but you feel its path. It brushes the straw, lifts a thread of ash, and stirs the hanging cloth at the doorway. The cabin seems to shiver in sections. Someone else has noticed. A woman rises from her pallet without fully standing. She moves on her knees, keeping low so she will not step on anyone. Her hand reaches toward the wall near the corner, where cold air enters sharply. She presses her fingers against the crack, testing the flow. The wind licks around her knuckles. She pulls back, finds a strip of cloth, and twists it tightly. Then she pushes it into the gap with the handle of a spoon. It is not a perfect seal. Nothing here is perfect except the confidence of winter. Still, the draught weakens. The cloth flutters once, then holds. The woman waits a moment, feeling for air, and nods to herself. Cabin walls in enslaved quarters often needed constant repair. Logs could shrink, clay could crumble, boards could warp, and roofs could leak after storms. Owners might ignore such problems unless they threatened labour efficiency. Residents therefore became builders, plasterers, roof patchers, and weather experts by necessity. You hear the wind change direction outside. It slides under the eaves with a thin, whining note. The sound makes a child stir and curl tighter beneath a quilt. An older hand reaches across the dark and pulls the quilt higher. The room is not awake, but it is alert. That is different. Sleep remains present, yet watchfulness moves through it like a thread through cloth. A cough, a footfall, a draught, a spark. Each small thing is weighed. Near the hearth, the oldest woman opens her eyes. She does not sit up immediately. She listens first. Her face is shadowed. but you sense the attention in it. When you have lived many winters in poor shelter, you know cold by sound. A gust rattles the door. The wooden latch lifts and drops with a tiny clack. Several bodies shift. No one speaks loudly. Loudness wastes warmth somehow, or at least it feels that way. A man nearest the door rises and places his palm against the lower boards. Cold pours through the threshold. The cloth stuffed there has loosened. He takes it out, shakes frost from one edge, and folds it thicker. He wedges the cloth back down with a flat piece of wood. Then he sets a heavy stone against it. The stone scrapes softly over the floor. The draught lessens, though a thin line of air still escapes along one side. The man pauses, listening beyond the door. Perhaps he hears nothing but weather. Perhaps he hears a branch moving or an animal nosing near the yard. On plantations, night sounds were never dismissed too quickly. The ear had duties. He returns to his pallet slowly, stepping between sleeping bodies. His foot brushes a bowl, and it gives a low wooden knock. He freezes. The baby sighs but does not wake. The room forgives him. You tuck your blanket around your legs more carefully. The fabric is coarse and stiff at the edges. Your fingers search for gaps where warmth escapes. It is amazing how quickly a blanket becomes architecture when the temperature drops. The cold outside is not the deep northern cold of iron rivers and buried roads. This is southern winter, damp and sly. It may not always look dramatic, but it enters the bones with quiet confidence. Wet cold knows how to linger. In Alabama, winter nights could fall below freezing, especially away from the Gulf Coast and in exposed fields. Enslaved quarters, often poorly insulated, made such cold harder to endure. The weather did not need to be extreme to become dangerous. Exhausted bodies feel every degree more sharply. A child begins to whimper in sleep. The sound is thin and troubled. The mother beside him pulls him closer without opening her eyes. Her arm wraps around him, and his breathing steadies. Warmth travels through contact faster than reassurance. Another child has kicked free of a covering. A teenage girl reaches over and tugs it back. She keeps her hand there a moment, pressing the quilt down around the small shoulders. The child mutters once, perhaps offended by rescue, then sinks deeper into sleep. The room's defences are humble. Cloth in cracks, ash over coals, bodies close together, a stone at the door, straw under quilts. These things sound too small against a freezing wind, but small things accumulate. Survival often looks unimpressive from a distance. You notice ash being used in more ways than one. Around the hearth, it banks coals and insulates heat. Near a damp spot, someone has scattered a little ash to dry the surface. In some cabins, ash could also help clean grease from pots or mark troublesome drafts. Ash is what fire leaves behind, and even that gets a second career. A quirky detail sits in the corner near the roof. A bundle of moss has been pushed into a gap between rafters. Spanish moss, grass, leaves, or rags could be used as temporary chinking in some places. Of course, moss also had opinions of its own. It might bring dampness, insects, or the faint smell of the woods. Still, the bundle slows the wind. You can see it tremble whenever a gust arrives. It looks like a sleeping animal tucked into the roofline. The cabin uses whatever the landscape offers, whether elegant or not. A man coughs twice and turns onto his side. The cough is rougher in the cold air. Smoke, dampness, crowding. An exposure could worsen sickness in winter quarters. Medical care for enslaved people was often controlled by owners, whose concern usually centred on labour value rather than comfort. That is a cold fact in a cold room. The older woman reaches for a cloth near her head and covers her mouth. Then she settles again. No one comments. In this room, people know how many kinds of cold exist. There is the cold outside. There is the cold of law. There is the cold of being measured by profit. But there is also the warmth made by refusal. It is not dramatic. It does not raise banners. It is a hand covering a child, a crack stuffed with cloth, a coal saved under ash. These are not small gestures when the night is long. The wind rises and presses hard against one wall. For a moment, the whole cabin seems to lean inward. Clay daubing flakes from a crack and falls in tiny crumbs. You hear it sprinkle onto the floor like dry sand. Someone whispers a warning to keep away from that corner. A sleeping child is shifted a few inches toward the centre. The movement causes a chain of adjustments. Knees fold, blankets lift. One person grumbles softly, then makes room anyway. Crowded sleeping can be uncomfortable, but it can also save heat. Human bodies give off warmth, and shared bedding traps it. Enslaved families and neighbours understood this without needing scientific language. Winter taught practical physics every night. A draft finds your neck and you pull the blanket higher. The wool smells of smoke, sweat, and old weather. You tuck the edge beneath your chin and breathe through the cloth. The air inside the blanket is warmer, damp from breath, and oddly reassuring. Some people slept in day clothes for warmth. Removing garments would be foolish when the room could not hold heat. Coats, shawls, headcloths, stockings, and extra skirts might become bedding. A person wore the night as much as slept through it. Near the hearth, the embers dim too far. A young man rises with a practiced motion and crouches low. He lifts the ash gently, not scattering it. A red coal appears, then another. He adds a splinter of dry pine and waits. The pine catches with a tiny blue tongue. Then it grows yellow. The flame is small, controlled, and precious. It gives just enough light to show steam rising from breath across the room. The young man shields the flame with one hand. He does not want it to flare high. Wood must last until morning. He feeds it a narrow shaving, then lets the ash settle back around the coals. Firekeeping is thrift with heat. Historians have discussed the differences between quarters on large plantations and smaller holdings. Some large plantations built rows of cabins that formed recognizable villages. Some smaller farms placed enslaved people in outbuildings, kitchens, lofts, or rough cabins near the owner's house. Scholars still disagree about how these arrangements shaped privacy, surveillance, and community strength. Architecture can hide many arguments. In this cabin, the argument is felt through every crack. Space allows connection, but little privacy. Shelter provides warmth, but little control. The wall separates inside from outside, yet the wind crosses whenever it pleases. Even wood seems political here. A loose shutter knocks once, twice, then stills. The sound travels through the room like a question. You wait. No footsteps answer. Only the wind slips past again, muttering through the eaves. The baby wakes with a small gasp. The mother lifts the child close beneath her shawl. She rubs the baby's back through the wrapping, slow circles in the dark. The baby protests, then quiets when warm skin meets chilled cheek. You smell milk, smoke, wool, and the faint sourness of damp straw. The air is heavy, but warmer near the clustered bodies. Every breath rises and fades into the dimness. The room feels both crowded and exposed, a strange combination. A child's bare heel touches your shin, cold as riverstone. You flinch inwardly, then let it stay. The foot warms gradually against you, somewhere in the universe. A philosopher may call this solidarity. Here, it is simply what happens when nobody has enough blanket. You hear someone quietly rubbing hands together beneath a cover. The dry whisper of skin against skin joins the wind's higher note. Fingers suffer quickly in cold weather, especially after wet labour. Cracked knuckles, stiff joints, and sore palms do not sleep easily. The older woman begins a soft murmured rhythm, not exactly a song. It may be a prayer, a comfort sound, or a way of keeping herself awake while the draft is watched. The syllables are indistinct. Their effect is clear, the room steadies, cold brings memory with it. Someone whispers about a winter when water froze in the bucket. Another answers with a brief mention of ice on the inside wall. No one competes too loudly. Misery contests are best avoided when everyone is already qualified. A young man gives a quiet chuckle at something said under breath. The laugh is brief and smoky. Humour slips under the quilt beside fear and cold. It belongs there too. The temperature seems to dip again near the hour before dawn, though dawn is not yet visible. That late-night cold can feel especially sharp, because the body has burned through its first store of warmth. The fire is low, the earth is hard, and sleep has thinned. Even the walls seem tired. A person near the door rises again to check the latch. This time he pulls an old sack over the lower half of the door and secures it with a peg. The sack smells of grain dust and mice. Not exactly royal perfume, but it blocks air better than Pride would. The draught reduces to a faint thread. You feel the difference almost immediately. The room does not become warm, it becomes less hostile. Sometimes less hostile is worth gratitude. You think about the labour needed just to maintain this condition. Someone gathered the sack, saved the cloth, found the stone, cut the wood, patched the roof, and banked the fire. Comfort here is not a state, it is an activity. The wind outside continues to roam. It moves through cotton stalks, over fences, around animal pens, and past the quarters. It finds weaker walls elsewhere too. Every cabin is having its own conversation with the cold. Inside, people negotiate without much speech. A shoulder shifts to block a child. A blanket edge is shared. A foot withdraws from a colder patch of floor. A hand checks that the baby still breathes warm air. You lie very still, feeling the difference between cold that harms and cold that merely troubles. The line is thin, wet clothes, empty stomachs, sickness, and exhaustion can push a person across it. Warmth is not indulgence. It is bodily defence. The fire gives another small pulse of light. You see the patched doorway, the moss in the roof gap, the ash-smoothed hearth, and the quilts drawn tight. Each detail is modest. Together, they form a strategy. The cabin's small protections do not erase the cruelty around them. They do not make the quarters picturesque or sweet. They show how people work constantly to protect life where protection was denied. That truth is quieter than outrage, but deeper than sentiment. A child sighs in sleep and presses closer to another warm body. The older woman's murmur fades. The man near the door finally lies down again, one arm still angled toward the threshold. Even resting, he keeps watch by habit. You feel sleep pulling at you again. The cold remains, but its edges have been blunted. The room has sealed itself as best it can, using cloth, ash, moss, bodies, and memory. The wind has not won. It has merely been delayed. The cabin settles beneath the weather. Frost glitters outside on wood and grass. Inside, breath gathers beneath quilts, and a hidden coal keeps its red eye open. You listen to the wind searching the cracks, and to the quiet human answer holding them closed. You drift in the thin place between sleep and waking, where every sound grows larger. The cabin is dark now, except for the dull red heart of the hearth. Shapes blur into one another. The room seems made of breathing, cloth and shadow. A cough rises from the corner, soft at first, then deeper. It stops quickly, swallowed into a blanket. Someone turns over, and straw crackles beneath the movement. The sound is dry and close, like a small animal moving under leaves. Outside, the wind has changed its voice. It no longer pushes steadily against the walls. Now it comes in restless gusts, pausing, returning, and wandering along the roof. Each gust finds a different gap, making the cabin answer in tiny whistles. You listen without opening your eyes. The night is busy, though no one is fully awake. A baby breathes in short, damp little sounds beneath a shawl. An older man exhales through his nose with a faint rasp. A child smacks his lips, dreaming perhaps of supper with better management. Sleep in this room is not silent. It is layered. Every person adds a note, and the cabin holds them together. Sniffles, sighs, murmurs, creaks, and the fire's occasional tick create a rough lullaby, not polished. No, but very sincere. A loose board near the roof gives a slow groan. The sound stretches, settles, then stops. The wood contracts in the cold, responding to weather like an old knee. Buildings have bodies too, at least when you listen long enough. Beyond the wall, something scratches near the ground. Everyone remains still. The scratching continues, quick and light. It is likely a mouse, though mice rarely introduce themselves formally. They are poor house guests with excellent confidence. Food scraps, warmth, and shelter drew animals toward cabins. Mice, rats, insects, dogs, chickens, and wandering cats could move around quarters at night. Enslaved people guarded food carefully, because even a few stolen kernels mattered. Hunger gave every creature ambition. The scratching fades. A child shifts closer to another body. The baby sighs again. The cabin relaxes by the smallest degree. Not enough to call it peace, but enough to keep sleeping. Then comes the sound of a dog far away. One bark, then two more. It carries across the plantation yard, thinned by wind and distance. Another dog answers from a different direction, lower and rougher. The exchange is brief, but every adult ear hears it. Dogs on plantations could mean many things. They guarded property, followed patrols, hunted animals, and sometimes tracked people who tried to flee. Their barking did not always signal danger, but it could never be ignored. A dog's voice in the night had teeth inside it. You feel the room's awareness sharpen. Breathing stays slow, but attention rises beneath it. Someone near the door opens one eye. Another person stops moving entirely. No one speaks, because silence can be a kind of listening tool. The dogs fall quiet. The wind fills the space they leave. A shutter knocks once against its peg, then settles. The cabin waits a little longer. Only when nothing follows does sleep begin to return. From farther off, you hear a mule stamp in a pen. The heavy thud carries through frozen ground. A chain or harness ring clinks once, bright and metallic in the dark. The animal snorts, then shifts again. Perhaps the cold has reached its legs too. Livestock-shaped plantation night sounds. Horses, mules, oxen, pigs, and chickens did not politely vanish after sunset. They shifted, called, rooted, stamped, and sometimes escaped with impressive timing. A loose pig, frankly, could ruin anyone's spiritual calm. A low chuckle comes from someone half awake, perhaps recognizing the animal's complaint. The chuckle ends quickly. The body returns to stillness. Even amusement seems to understand the hour. You hear an owl from the trees beyond the yard. Its call is hollow and rounded, floating through the cold. Another owl answers from farther away. The sound feels older than the plantation, older than the cabins, older than the fence lines. The land had a night voice long before forced cotton fields. Owls held different meanings across cultures and regions. Some people heard warning in them. Some heard death, wisdom, weather, or nothing more than a hungry bird being dramatic. Belief often lived beside practical knowledge. A person might know the owl hunts mice and still respect the shiver it sends through the dark. A woman near the hearth murmurs something under her breath when the owl calls again. It might be a charm, a prayer, or a simple remark to no one in particular. She does not seem frightened. She seems attentive, as though answering courtesy with courtesy. Historians still debate how African spiritual ideas, Christian beliefs, and local folk practices blended in enslaved communities. Some practices left clear traces in stories, healing, charms, and burial customs. Others remained difficult to separate, because people did not always label their beliefs for future scholars. The night keeps many of its footnotes to itself. You lie still and listen to the owl fade. The cabin sounds return one by one. A sleeper swallows. A quilt rustles. A coal shifts under ash with a faint sigh. A piece of wood in the hearth breaks inward, making a soft red flash. That tiny flash briefly reveals the room, a row of sleeping shoulders, a child's braid against cloth, a hand resting palm up near the hearth, a shoe leaning beside the door. Then darkness returns, covering everything gently. From the direction of the main house, a faint sound crosses the yard. It might be a door closing, it might be a shutter, it might be nothing more than a tree limb striking wood. Yet the room changes as soon as the sound arrives. The main house is not merely a building here, it is a source of command, surveillance, and interruption. Fires there may be burning in larger hearths, beds there may have thicker mattresses, but the comfort inside that house depends on the labour sleeping uneasily in these quarters. You hear footsteps, or imagine them. The sound is distant, measured, and then gone. Someone near you opens their eyes in the dark. You cannot see the expression clearly, but you feel the calculation. Is it weather? Is it a person? Is it danger? Night teaches difficult arithmetic. Nothing comes closer. No knock strikes the door. No order breaks the cabin's hush. The footsteps, if they were footsteps, disappear into the cold yard. The room does not relax all at once. It loosens slowly, like a fist remembering it can open. Slave patrols were part of the wider system controlling black movement in many southern places. Patrols could question, search, whip, or intimidate enslaved people found travelling without permission. Their presence made roads, fields, woods, and even nighttime gatherings risky. The fear of patrols could enter sleep itself. A man near the doorway shifts so his body faces the entrance. Perhaps he does it unconsciously. His arm lies outside the blanket now, cold against the floor. He does not pull it back. A guarding habit has claimed him even in near sleep. The baby begins to fuss again, this time more insistently. The mother wakes fully, though quietly. She lifts the child beneath the cover and rocks from side to side. The motion barely disturbs the bedding. Her whisper is close, warm, and rhythmic. The baby's cry fades into wet breathing. The mother hums one note, then another. It is not a full song. It is a thread of sound, enough for the child to follow back towards sleep. The whole cabin seems grateful. You can smell the baby's cloth, sour and smoky, mingled with wool and ash. You can feel the damp cold near the floor and the warmer breath beneath the quilt. The atmosphere presses close. It is uncomfortable, protective, weary, and tender all at once. A rooster calls too early from somewhere near the yard. The sound is cracked and overly confident. No one respects it. Someone whispers that the bird is a fool. Another voice says even the rooster wants the night finished. Roosters do sometimes call long before dawn, disturbed by light, weather, animals, or mysterious rooster opinions. This one calls again, as if proud of his poor scheduling. A child stirs, then settles. The cabin refuses to rise for poultry nonsense. The rooster quiets, perhaps reconsidering his career. The wind resumes its low run along the eaves. You hear dry cotton stalks beyond the quarters clicking against each other. Their brittle tapping is faint but steady. The fields are speaking in their sleep. Cotton itself shaped the sounds of this world. Dry stalks rattled in winter. Wagons creaked during hauling. Gins groaned when worked. Bale ropes strained. Human voices rose and fell over rows. Even in sleep, the plantation's crop remains present as texture, debt, labour, and command. A child dreams aloud. Just a few unclear words. Someone answers gently without waking. The child turns toward the voice. Language works even when meaning is mostly gone. A familiar tone can guide a sleeper like a hand in the dark. Near your feet. The warm stone has cooled. You feel the difference in the air around it. Its borrowed heat is nearly spent. The foot beside it pulls away and tucks beneath another leg. The body edits its own map. A faint dripping sound begins near the roof. Not water exactly. Perhaps thawing frost where warmth meets cold wood. Drop. Pause. Drop. It lands in a small area by the wall. Someone will notice more fully in daylight because roofs enjoy creating future chores. The sound is soft enough to become part of the room. You count 3 drops, then lose count. Counting in the dark has a way of becoming dreaming. Your thoughts blur at the edges. Then a distant voice travels across the yard. It's too far to understand, and perhaps not meant for the quarters. It might come from a watchman, a late worker, or someone near the stables. The tone is brief. The cabin listens until the voice disappears. Voices at night carried risk and information. A shout might signal fire, trouble with animals, patrols, illness, or command. A whisper might carry news, comfort, warning, or prayer. Sound was never merely sound. It had to be sorted quickly. The room's listeners have been trained by years of necessity. They know the difference between a drunken laugh and an overseer's step, between a branch and a door latch, between an owl and a person imitating one. Such knowledge rarely appears in formal records. It lives in nerves and skin. A man exhales slowly after the distant voice fades. The breath tells you he had been holding it. He turns his face back toward the hearth. His body tries once more to accept sleep. It takes effort, this surrender. You notice how the cabin soundscape contains both danger and comfort. The same wind that threatens warmth also hides quiet conversation. The same dog bark that warns of control may also warn of strangers. The same owl that chills one person may soothe another. Night refuses simple categories. A soft snore begins near the wall. It is not loud, but it is determined. Someone nudges the sleeper gently. The snore pauses, then resumes at a lower volume, as if obeying only partly. Even exhaustion has comic timing. You feel a smile rise, small and private. The dark permits it. Humour appears in the narrowest places, slipping between coughs and draughts. It does not deny suffering. It simply declines to let suffering have the entire room. The coals are dimmer now, but not gone. Their light pulses whenever air reaches them. A red line appears beneath ash, then fades. The hearth is listening too, in its slow wooden language. Outside, an animal moves through frozen grass. The rustle is quick, then still. A possum, perhaps, or a raccoon. Their small lives continue around human systems without requesting permission. Nature can be deeply indifferent, which is occasionally refreshing. You wonder what the woods sound like beyond the cleared plantation land. More owls, perhaps. Pines rubbing together. A creek moving under roots. Leaves scraping over hard soil. The woods might offer hiding, food, danger, memory, and rumour all at once. For many enslaved people, woods and swamps held complicated meanings. They could provide game, herbs, secret meeting places, temporary refuge, and possible routes of escape. They could also hold patrols, dogs, snakes, cold, and hunger. Freedom imagined through trees still had mud on its feet. A sleeper murmurs a name again. The name sounds like someone loved, or feared, or missed. No answer comes this time. The person sighs and turns over. The room absorbs the ache without asking questions. Dreams under slavery could not be fully controlled. Though sleep was shaped by bondage, people dreamed of family, labour, escape, punishment, home, faith, and ordinary foolishness too. A dream might bring back someone sold away. It might also bring a rooster with opinions. The mind is strange enough to be merciful. The owl calls once more, farther away now. The rooster does not answer, showing rare wisdom. The wind drops for a few breaths, and the quiet becomes wide. In that quiet, you hear the smallest sounds of all. A child's eyelashes moving against cloth, a finger scratching at wool, the slow settle of ash, a breath catching, then smoothing. These sounds are nearly nothing, yet together they are the proof of life held through night. The cabin has become an instrument played by weather, bodies, animals, and memory. No tune is planned. No conductor stands proudly in front. Thankfully. Still, a pattern emerges. Alarm. Waiting. relief, breath, and sleep. You let that pattern carry you. The world outside remains cold and watched. The yard holds dogs, frost, fields, and distant authority. The cabin holds coughs, murmurs, children, coals, and tired guardianship. The last thing you hear clearly is the wind moving under the eaves. It slides along the roof and thins into a whisper. Beneath it, someone hums once in sleep, only one small note. Then even that note disappears. The dark grows deep again. The sounds do not stop, but they soften enough to become a blanket of their own. You rest inside the breathing room, where every creak has meaning, every silence is tested, and every sleeping life is quietly listened for. You sink into a heavier sleep, the kind that comes when the body has argued with cold for hours. The cabin remains around you, but its edges loosen. The walls become darker, softer, less certain. The fire becomes one red eye watching from a place both near and far. Dreams begin quietly. They do not enter like theatre curtains or thunder. They arrive through ordinary things, a patch of field, a bowl of warm food, a hand you almost recognize, a road that keeps bending away before you reach it. You find yourself walking through cotton rows under a pale winter moon. The stalks stand bare and dry, with burrs like little clenched fists. Frost shines along the ridges of soil. Your feet make no sound, yet you feel the cold earth through thin soles. In the dream, no overseer calls, no bell rings, no dog barks. The field is strangely empty, and that emptiness feels both beautiful and suspicious. Freedom in dreams can have a nervous edge. Even sleep knows the habits of danger. You walk toward a line of trees at the edge of the cleared land. The trees seem close, then farther, then close again. The wind moves through them with a sound like water. Somewhere beyond them, a creek waits in darkness, carrying a low silver voice. For enslaved people, dreams of movement held special power. Actual movement was restricted by passes, patrols, ownership claims, and violence. Yet the mind could still travel, revisiting kin, imagined homelands, roads northward, hidden meetings, or sacred places. Bondage could police feet, it could not fully police sleep. Still, even dreams are shaped by waking life. You feel yourself glance over your shoulder, though no one follows. You listen for a horse, a shout, the snap of brush. Your dream body has learned caution from your waking body. That is how deeply fear can settle. Then the field changes. The rows become a road. The road becomes a riverbank. Frost becomes mist rising from dark water. You hear oars dipping, slow and careful. A boat appears without a boatman, tied to a root beneath cypress shadows. Water often carried layered meaning in enslaved spiritual life and song. It could suggest danger, crossing, cleansing, escape, death, baptism, or deliverance. Rivers divided states, fields, plantations, and sometimes worlds of hope. A water crossing could be practical and sacred at once. You step toward the boat, but a voice calls your name from behind. It is soft, not commanding. You turn and see faces near the cabin hearth, faces lit by a glow that should not reach the river. They are waiting. Some are clear, some blur like smoke. The dream will not decide whether you are leaving or returning. Perhaps that is truthful. Enslaved families often lived with divided longing, wanting escape, safety, loved ones, and survival at the same time. A person might dream of running and still fear what running could cost others. A child's face appears near the fire, then an older woman's hands, then a young man holding a repaired tool. The images shift without asking permission. Dreams are poor housekeepers, always moving furniture in the dark. You try to speak, but the sound becomes a song. The song has no full words, only the shape of yearning. It rises through your chest and becomes a hum shared by many voices. The field, the river, and the cabin all seem to hum together. Music in dreams can carry what waking speech must hide. Enslaved songs often held double meanings: personal grief, communal hope, and religious imagery. A line about going home might mean heaven, family, freedom, death, or a place remembered from stories. Meaning did not sit still. It knew better. The hum fades into the sound of a chain, but not a loud one. It is only a faint metal touch somewhere in the dark. Link against link. Pause. Link against link. The sound does not need to grow louder. The mind recognizes it quickly enough. You feel the dream tighten. The road narrows. The trees bend inward. The boat at the creek begins to drift away, though no current pulls it. Your feet sink into mud, and the cold rises through your legs. Slavery invaded sleep not only through fear, but through exhaustion. Long labour, poor housing, hunger, family separation, and violence shaped how people rested. Rest was never merely biological in such conditions. It was political, emotional, and painfully fragile. Yet the dream resists becoming only terror. A rabbit darts across the mud and stops beside the water. It looks at you with bright, unreasonable confidence. Then it leaps onto a stump and begins washing its face, as though the entire nightmare is badly organised. You almost laugh in your sleep. The rabbit looks too small to matter, which is exactly why it matters. Trickster figures carried wit into places where strength could not go. Even in dreams, the small creature refuses to behave like a victim for anyone's convenience. A quirky dream detail follows. The rabbit pulls a pepper from nowhere and drops it into the creek. The water begins to steam and smell sharply of vinegar and spice. Apparently, even a river can be seasoned if the storyteller is tired enough. The dream accepts this completely. The sharp smell wakes some part of you. Not fully, just enough to feel the real cabin again. Smoke presses against the rafters. Wool scratches your cheek. A child's foot rests against your shin, warmer now than it was. Then sleep folds over you once more. This time you're inside a church that is also a cabin, and also the woods. Benches are made of logs. Stars shine through the roof. A preacher's voice rises, but the face is hidden in shadow. The words speak of Israel, bondage, wilderness, and a promised land. Such biblical themes resonated deeply among many enslaved Christians because they offered language for suffering and liberation. Enslavers often preferred sermons about obedience. Enslaved listeners found exodus, deliverance, judgment, and divine justice far more interesting. Naturally, historians still argue about how enslaved people interpreted Christianity across different communities. Some emphasize resistance and liberation in religious practice. Others note the pressure of white-controlled worship and the complexity of conversion under coercion. Faith in this world is not simple. It is a field crossed by many paths. In the dream church, people answer the hidden voice in low murmurs. Their response is not loud enough to draw danger. Still, it gathers strength with each breath. The sound rises like warmth beneath ash, quiet but difficult to extinguish. You look down and see that the floor is made of packed earth. Green shoots begin to push through it. Beans, perhaps. Corn. Maybe okra. Because dreams enjoy mixing seasons with no respect for agriculture. The shoots grow around bare feet and between sleeping pallets. The plants do not break the room. They make it larger. Their leaves brush ankles with cool tenderness. The smell of damp soil fills the dream, rich and dark. You breathe it in and feel hunger and hope become strangely close. Garden dreams may have carried deep emotional meaning. A garden patch could represent food, skill, family labour, small control, and future planning. Saving seeds was a way to believe in a season not yet reached. To plant was to argue with despair using dirt. A woman in the dream hands you a seed. It is black, glossy, and warm from her palm. She does not tell you what it grows. She only closes your fingers around it. Her hand feels familiar, though you cannot name her. Names matter fiercely under slavery. Enslaved people carried given names, family names, nicknames, African-derived names, biblical names, and names altered by owners or records. A name could honour kin, preserve memory, signal affection, or resist erasure. The dream woman's namelessness feels like a wound and a protection. You try to ask who she is. The question becomes breath. She smiles sadly, then points toward the hearth. The hearth is now a sunrise, low and red across the floor. You understand nothing clearly. Dreams are fond of making wisdom inconvenient. Outside the dream church, a bell begins ringing. Its sound is not restful. It is not Sunday morning. It is a labour bell, or maybe only the memory of one. Each ring spreads across the field like cold iron. You want the bell to stop. Everyone wants the bell to stop. But bells belong to waking life, and waking life is approaching. The dream begins to fray at the edges. The stars vanish from the roof. The green shoots fade into straw. In slavery, bells, horns, and calls often mark the beginning and rhythm of labour. They turn time into command. The day did not begin when the body felt ready. It began when authority announced itself. Even sleep could be broken by someone else's schedule. You feel anger in the dream, but it is quiet anger. It does not burst. It settles into the chest like a coal. Quiet anger can last a long time. It can warm courage when carefully banked. A young man appears at the edge of the dream road. He's walking away, carrying nothing but a bundle. You cannot see his face. He turns once, lifts a hand, and then the fog covers him. The absence he leaves behind feels larger than the road. The domestic slave trade tore many families apart in the decades before the Civil War. Alabama's cotton expansion drew enslaved people through sale, forced migration, and owner relocation. Some came from the Upper South in coffles, steamboats, wagons, and chained groups. The movement created wealth for traders and grief for families. Dreams could return those separated by sale. A mother might see a child grown taller. A husband might hear a wife's voice. A sibling might appear at the doorway without explanation. Sleep could reunite people for a moment, then take them away again at waking. The fog lifts, and suddenly you are beside the cabin fire. The young man's bundle has become a rolled quilt. The road has become the crack beneath the door. The bell has become the wind-tapping wood. The dream tries to make sense of the real world entering it. A child murmurs in the cabin, pulling you nearer to waking. The sound is small, but human. You hear someone soothe the child with a word. The word might be hush, baby, or sleep. Its meaning is warmth. You hover between worlds, in one. Rivers steam with pepper and fields become roads. In the other, bodies breathe beneath patched quilts while frost clings outside. Both worlds tell the truth differently. One uses images, one uses cold. Sleep under ownership is never fully private, yet dreams can create hidden rooms. In those rooms, people may remember, fear, mock, pray, imagine, and meet the absent. The enslaver may command labour, movement, names on paper, and waking hours. The inward world remains harder to seize. That does not make dreams romantic. They can hurt. They can bring back losses too vividly. They can make mourning crueler by showing what cannot yet be held. But they can also keep desire alive, and desire is dangerous to any system built on submission. You turn slightly beneath the blanket. Straw scratches your wrist. Your breath warms the cloth over your mouth. The cooled stone near the feet gives no comfort now, but the child beside you does. Small warmth remains, stubborn and real. A final dream arrives, gentle and brief. You stand in a doorway at dawn, though the sun has not yet risen in the real world. The field is gone. The river is gone. The cabin yard opens into a wide road lined with trees in leaf, not winter bare. People walk along the road without hurry. Some carry baskets, some hold children, some sing in voices no one lowers for fear. Their clothes are plain, but clean. Their faces are turned toward light you cannot see. You do not know whether this is memory, prophecy, longing, heaven, or the mind trying to comfort itself. Perhaps it does not need a label. Hope often survives by refusing to fill out proper paperwork. It simply appears where it is needed. The road glows softly. The trees move in warm wind. There is no frost, no barking, no bell. You take one step forward, and the scene begins to dissolve. The real cabin returns with its dark roof and smoky air. A sleeper sighs. A coal glows faintly. The wind has weakened, but it still touches the walls with cold fingers. Morning is not here, not quite. You lie still, carrying the dreams like embers hidden under ash. Fear is there, so is memory, so is humour, faith, hunger, longing, and the image of a road without permission. None of it is simple. None of it belongs to the enslaver. Around you the room remains quiet, crowded, and alive. Each sleeper holds an inward country no law can fully map. Some dreams may fade with waking. Others will remain, tucked behind the eyes, waiting for a song, a seed, a name, or a road. The last red coal dims and brightens once, like a heart deciding to continue. You breathe slowly and feel the cabin breathe with you. Outside, frost grips the yard. Inside, dreams loosen their hold and leave behind a small, hidden warmth. A faint greyness begins to gather at the edges of the cabin. It is not daylight yet, not truly. It is only the first loosening of darkness, a pale suggestion along the cracks. The room remains quiet, but the night has begun to release its grip. You open your eyes without meaning to. The rafters above you are still dim, soot darkened and blurred by old smoke. A cold heaviness rests near the floor. Your blanket holds a narrow pocket of warmth, and leaving it feels like a poor business proposal. The fire is almost gone, beneath its cover of ash. One coal remains red at the centre. It glows faintly, then dims, then glows again when air reaches it. A fire can look dead and still be keeping its promise. Around you, sleepers remain curled beneath quilts and cloth. The shapes are quiet and close, like stones warmed during the day and cooling through night. A child's hand rests open on the bedding. An older person's breath comes slowly, with a small catch at the end. Outside, the wind has softened. It still moves across the yard, but without its earlier sharpness. The sound is lower now, dragging through grass, touching fence rails, slipping past the door. It feels less like an attack and more like a tired visitor. A rooster calls again, more reasonably this time. The sound cracks through the pale air, bold and uneven. Somewhere another bird answers with a sleepy rustle. The plantation is not awake, but it is preparing to become unpleasantly official. You listen for the first human sounds beyond the cabin. At first there is nothing. Then a distant door opens. A hinge complains in the cold. A bucket knocks against wood. Somewhere, a mule stamps and shakes its harness. The world of labour is gathering itself. On an Alabama cotton plantation in 1840, work could begin early, shaped by season, crop demands, weather, and the owner's system. Winter did not always mean rest. Repairs, clearing, hauling, livestock care, domestic labour, and preparation for planting could fill cold months. A woman near the hearth wakes first, or perhaps she's only been pretending to sleep. She opens her eyes and lies still for a breath. Then she rises carefully, keeping her blanket around her shoulders. Her movements are slow, not from laziness, but from soreness. She reaches toward the hearth and uncovers the coal. Ash spills aside in a soft grey slide. The coal brightens as if embarrassed to be caught alive. She places a pinch of dry straw near it, then a splinter of pine. Smoke curls upward before flame appears. The first flame is tiny, blue at its base and yellow at the tip. She cups her hands around it, protecting it from the draught. The room seems to lean toward that little light. Even those still sleeping may feel its promise. Fire revived from embers saved work at dawn. Without a living coal, someone might need flint, steel, tinder, or help from another hearth. Keeping coals alive through the night was ordinary domestic skill. Ordinary, yes. But ordinary things often hold civilization together while important men take credit. The flame strengthens. It touches the pine, then climbs. The smell of fresh smoke rises, sharper than the stale smoke trapped overnight. It fills your nose and wakes your throat. The air becomes warmer by one small degree, which the body accepts gratefully. A child stirs near the hearth and pulls the quilt over his head. The woman looks at him with sympathy, then keeps working. Morning has no respect for childhood either. It arrives with chores tucked under both arms. She sets a small pot near the fire and pours in water from a covered vessel. The water sounds thin and cold against iron. Soon it will warm enough for washing, drinking, or a little meal. The pot begins its patient wait above the growing heat. Others begin to wake by instinct. A man turns onto his back and rubs his face. A teenage girl sits up with her braid loose over one shoulder. The oldest woman flexes her hands under the blanket before exposing them to the room. Every awakening is a negotiation with cold joints. The cabin fills with small morning sounds. Cloth lifted from straw. A shoe dragged closer. A baby fussing at the change in warmth. Someone clearing a throat. Someone whispering a name. The night stillness breaks into careful fragments. A child is helped into rough shoes. The leather is stiffened overnight and resists the foot. The child makes a face and an adult presses the heel down firmly. There is no time for lengthy debate with footwear. Shoes, like history, can be uncomfortable and unavoidable. Near the wall, a woman folds a quilt quickly and shakes straw from its edge. Another person smooths a pallet flat and pushes it aside. The room must become daytime space again. Sleeping places shrink and work places return. This daily transformation matters. A one-room cabin had to serve as bedroom, kitchen, workshop, nursery, storage area, sick room, and social space. Furniture and bedding moved according to need. Crowding required choreography. Everyone knew the steps because bumping into everything was an inefficient lifestyle. A man reaches for the repaired hoe handle. He tests the cord wrapped around it. It holds. He gives a small nod. Not proud exactly, but satisfied. A repair surviving the night is a modest victory, and modest victories deserve witnesses. The woman at the hearth stirs cornmeal into warming water. The mixture thickens slowly. Steam lifts from the pot, carrying a plain, comforting scent. Breakfast may be small, but warmth in the stomach can make a cold morning slightly less cruel. A baby is passed from one pair of arms to another. The mother adjusts her shawl and reaches for a cloth bundle. Someone else takes the child and murmurs softly. Care moves through the room like a quiet current. Not announced, simply done. The first light reaches the doorway. It shows the stuffed cloth at the threshold. Damp at the edges. Frost has formed along the lower boards. When the door opens later, cold air will rush in again. For now, the cabin keeps its last pocket of night. A young woman kneels near the shelf and checks a small packet of seed. She touches it, then tucks it away. No planting will happen this freezing morning, yet the gesture matters. A future season is being guarded in a folded cloth. Seed saving was practical and hopeful. Enslaved people who tended gardens often preserved seed from useful plants when they could. Seeds meant food, flavour, medicine, barter, and memory. To keep a seed is to believe the world will still need tending. Historians still argue how much these small acts should be understood as resistance. Some emphasize survival within constraint. Others see every protected family practice, garden, song, and skill as a form of refusal. Perhaps the answer depends on how closely you look. From far away, it is a seed. From inside the hand, it is tomorrow. A quirky morning habit appears as one child rubs ash-darkened fingers over a damp spot near the hearth. An adult stops him and wipes his hand with a cloth. The child looks betrayed by cleanliness. Ash has many uses, but decorating one's face before labour is apparently not approved. The room laughs softly. The laughter is brief, but it brightens the air. In this place, humour does not need a stage. It only needs a child, some ash, and one exhausted adult trying to maintain civilization. Outside, the yard is turning grey-blue. Frost lies across the ground in thin silver patches. Fence rails glow faintly. Cotton stalks stand stiff and bare, their shadows long in the first light. The world looks clean, which is rather rude, considering everything it has witnessed. Someone opens the door a hand's width. Cold pours in immediately, sharp and pale. The smell of morning enters with it, frost, mud, animals, distant smoke, and the faint damp odour of fields. Several people pull their coverings tighter. The man at the door looks out without stepping through. His breath clouds in front of him. Across the yard, another cabin shows movement. A figure bends near a doorway. Smoke begins rising from another chimney in a thin blue line. The quarters are waking together. One fire becomes several. One cough is answered by another. A child cries somewhere, then is soothed. A bucket clatters. The community emerges from darkness in scattered sounds and small columns of smoke. Plantation records might describe labour units, ages, values, or work assignments. They rarely capture this morning complexity. They miss the ash on the child's hand, the seed packet, the shared baby, the stiff shoe, the coal saved carefully through freezing dark. Records count property. Life exceeds the count. A woman wraps cloth around her head and ties it securely. Her fingers move quickly, pulling the fabric smooth. Head coverings could protect hair during labour, preserve warmth, and express care in appearance despite harsh conditions. Even rushed preparation can carry dignity. The oldest woman receives a cup of warm liquid first. She takes it with both hands and nods. No one makes a speech about respect. Respect is shown through timing, through placement, through the first warmth offered. Some customs are quieter than words and stronger for it. The child with the ash-cleaned hand receives a small portion of mush. He eats carefully, still sleepy. Steam touches his face. His eyelids lower between bites. Morning has arrived, but his body has not signed the agreement. You sit with the others as the pale light grows. The fire strengthens, and shadows retreat into corners. Details return to the room, cracked clay in the wall, folded cloth near the door, a row of shoes, a hanging gourd, the roof beam dark with soot. The cabin looks poorer in daylight. Night softened its roughness. Morning reveals every patch, stain, gap, and worn edge. Yet daylight also shows the work of survival more clearly. Every repair is visible proof that someone refused collapse. A distant call sounds across the plantation. It is not loud yet, but it changes the room. Shoulders straighten, hands move faster. The day's command has begun to press inward. The warmth of the cabin, so carefully gathered, will soon be left behind. No one rushes foolishly. People move with practiced speed. A bundle is tied, a cup is emptied, a child is kissed quickly on the head, a tool is lifted from beside the door. The old night becomes the working day. You feel the tenderness of these last minutes. They are not sentimental. They are practical, hurried, and cold. But they hold a kind of grace. Someone adjusts another person's collar. Someone warns a child to stay near the hearth. Someone checks that the baby's wrapping is tight. The door opens wider. Morning air enters fully, bright and freezing. Smoke bends toward it, then rises. The people stepping out carry the cabin's warmth on their clothes for only a little while. The cold will take most of it quickly. Outside, frost crunches beneath feet. Breath lifts in pale clouds. The quarter row is stirring under a winter sky. Each cabin releasing smoke and people into the grey light. The main house waits beyond the yard. The fields wait beyond that. You remain at the doorway for one breath longer. Behind you, the fire burns low and steady, ready to serve those staying near the cabin. In front of you, the plantation opens like a cold page already written by someone else. But the people walking into it are not blank ink. They carry stories as jokes, seeds, as songs, repairs, names, recipes, warnings, dreams, and the memory of warmth. They carry one another in ways no ledger can hold. Their lives have been forced into bondage, but not emptied of meaning. That distinction matters. The sun has not yet risen fully. A pale band of light rests along the horizon. The wind moves once more through the yard, gentler now, touching smoke as it climbs. The cabin behind you glows faintly from within, its fire still breathing, its ashes still warm. And now, as the morning takes shape, let the scene soften. Let the hard lines blur at the edges. Let the field grow quieter in your mind, and let the frost shine without biting. You do not need to follow every footstep into the day. You may remain for a while beside the hearth, where the last warmth gathers in the clay and the smoke rises in patient blue threads. Let the small cabin become only a low shape in the grey distance. Let the voices grow softer, not gone, just resting beyond reach. The wind loosens, and the first sunlight touches the roof, turning each cold board a muted gold. The fire settles into a calm glow, no longer struggling, simply present. You breathe in slowly. Smoke, ash, wool, earth, and morning air. You breathe out slowly. The night has passed through fear, work, hunger, story, cold, dream, and tenderness. Nothing about it was simple. Nothing about it should be made small. Yet in this final quiet, you may rest with a gentler truth that people made warmth where warmth was denied. The ember lowers, the room grows still, a folded quilt waits near the wall, a little seed packet rests hidden and safe. Outside, the day begins, but you can let it drift away from you now. The cold field fades, the cabin fades, the last red coal becomes a soft point of light, then a memory of light, then only warmth behind closed eyes. Sleep well?